I'd like to open the June 18th, 2020 Historic Districts Commission meeting. This meeting is being held remotely as an alternate means of public access pursuant to order issued by the Governor of Massachusetts dated March 12th, 2020, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You are hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the town of Hingham in accordance with the open meeting law. So before getting started, I'd like to ask the commission if there are any conflicts with any of the applications tonight.
No.
No.
I'm going to recuse myself. Bridget and I are friends, and I recuse myself from the last set of hearings. So.
Okay, so that's 8 Pond Street?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll appoint, I need to appoint 2 voting members for 8 Pond Street because the 3 voting members would be Hans, myself, and Carol. As Catherine has recused herself, we'll need 2 more. So I'd like to ask if Ben and Justin, you're able to do both 8 Pond Street?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm just going to go out to video. I'm going to turn off my video for the next 2 applications so that I don't have to, but I'll be here.
Okay.
Okay.
And then for 93 Main Street, we'll need to submit, we'll need to appoint 1 more. Tomas, are you able to do that one?
Yes.
Okay. And then 17 Middle Street, we'll need to submit an alternate. Tracy, would you be able to do that one? 17 Middle?
Yeah, assuming that I am permitted to.
You are.
Okay.
Okay, it looks like we're all set then. So the first application, there's actually 2 applications for the same address, but the first application for 8 Pond Street is to construct a new barn with 1st floor garage and finished 2nd floor. So with that, 8 Pond Street, if you want to walk us through your project.
Hi, I'm Chris Diorsa. I hope you can all hear me. I didn't bring headphones and a mic today. You can hear me?
Yes.
Yep, all good.
I think you have the application for, we're going to start with the barn. If I could share my screen.
Okay, sure. Hold on one
Go
second.
through it.
Yeah. Okay, you're co-host, so you should be able to.
Okay, is that working?
Yes.
Okay, great. So there we have it. You saw the house and the addition that we covered last time. Here's the first page for a barn. It's a 24 by 36 with an 8 by 22 foot shed, single story shed on the side. It'll have a car garage on the 1st floor and then finished space on the 2nd floor. Here's the site plan. You can see where the barn is going to sit, roughly at the end of the existing driveway behind the house. Floor plan, garage in the center, storage area in the shed off to the side, and a stairway up to the 2nd floor. 2nd floor is there with a half bath, an open area loft, and a balcony in the back.
Excuse me, Chris, are we supposed to be seeing the floor plans?
I'm sharing my screen. You should be looking at a roof plan at the moment.
No, we're seeing just the original.
Just the
Title
first page.
one.
The title page.
I'm getting a notice that my screen sharing is paused. Let's see. Zoom share. Okay, how about that?
There we go.
Okay, thank you.
We also missed the site plan too. There we go.
That's the site plan. The barn is at the end of the driveway on the right-hand side there. At the end of the driveway behind the house. First floor is cars and storage with a stair up. Second floor is open space with a half bath and a deck to the rear lawn, rear yard. Roof plan, shed dormers below, and then an A-frame dormer facing south and two skylights on the northern roof. That's the front elevation. That's the primary elevation that would be seen from Pond Street or Main Street. This is the south elevation, or the right-hand side looking at it from the street. The rear elevation, and the north side. Here's the section. The total height is 26 feet. Apologize. Here's the cornice detail. We're doing a compound miter for the rake and return. Right there. And doors and windows. I'd be happy to take any questions or clarify anything.
And, Carol, I think you're speaking, but you're on mute.
Mr. Chairman, I think we also have a butters here this evening.
Okay. So I think I don't want to shortcut your presentation, but I think if you're done with the presentation, what I'd like to do is ask if there are any abutters who'd like to speak or ask questions, and then we can get into the questions as the commission. So is there anybody on that would like to speak to 8 Pond Street Barn? Okay, if you decide to change and would like to speak during the process, certainly let us know, and we would certainly welcome your comment. So, Carol, it sounded like you wanted to ask a question.
You talking to me?
Yep.
Hi. Well, first of all, I'm kind of giggling because Mrs. Minicus has her Greek revival that she told us she wanted and likes, with the outline of the barn facing the street. When we were there, we didn't really go to the very back of the property. Are the neighbors on the street behind this going to have much of a view of the back of the barn?
I think the question would, do you see much of the back from a public way, or is it the Pond Street side? Is that really where you'd see from the public way, or is there any other opportunity to see this from a public way?
No, other than the front, as Chris is showing it, because behind this property is a the property that belongs to, oh, I'm embarrassed, I forgot her name, Beth, on Pleasant Street. They have a very large lot. Pardon?
Beth Rockoff?
Yes, 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 thank you. There's a tree line at the back of this property that's pretty lush. And even when the tree line is bare, it is the very, very back of her property. I don't think they're back there. I can see her pool house from this yard, so I suspect they'll see the structure for sure.
We all
But
see
it's
pool.
nowhere near the house.
In terms of the siting of the structure, can you walk us through that? It looks like you're right up against a setback property line, but did you think about where is it? And it's 23 feet from a portion of the house.
The setback of 15 feet just makes sense considering how narrow this property is. So to move it farther behind the house might be a little awkward. The reason it is that close to the house versus being in the back, and it could possibly be a little closer to the house if that's the issue, but we want fairly easy access because it is our garage for all intents and purposes. So we don't want it to the back of the property for access, but also my neighbors did express, and I agree with it 100%, the driveway is getting enlarged or lengthened because of the barn. And they wouldn't want to see a driveway going up the entire edge of the property, and nor would I, frankly, if I were them. So this was just, that helped a lot with the placement, that, and, you know, knowing they didn't want to see, you know, a line of cars up there, and that we wanted it sort of close to the house. So that's why it's placed there. And you can see it's kind of a narrow lot. So again, we didn't want to shove it behind the house.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then I'd like to open it up to the commission then. Anybody like to start? Okay, I'll start. So I think what I'm looking at, you know, my other questions sort of are related to the size of the structure, particularly as it relates to the main house. And I understand this is a barn, and a lot of times barn structures have different proportions than the house, but could you explain what is sort of driving the height of the structure? And I know proportionally the width versus the height needs to make sense, but the massing of this seems a little big compared to the existing house, and even with the new addition to the existing house.
It's not on the size for a barn. It's 24 feet wide, which is fairly typical for a barn of that vintage. So we're talking, you know, mid-19th century. 36 feet deep. The gable end, the narrow end, is facing the street. There is a knee wall on the second floor that's only 4 feet tall. And the roof pitch is a 10, which again is fairly typical of barns of that vintage. So if you have a 24-foot wide barn, which is a typical width, 4-foot knee wall, and a 10 pitch, it puts the height at about 26 feet, which is quite common. I think you would see a lot of barns at that size on Main Street and in the historic district.
May I say something too about that? And Chris can continue, but I think that we were sort of, the last meetings that we had, there was really a lot of flexibility for us to design something. There was no direction in that it had to be lower than the house roof line or taller, that it, you know, a barn seemed appropriate. So I know no one is surprised that we're coming back with this, but this was our, we thought a good starting point, if not the end point. But the height also was something that we felt like it was a little, we had some liberty to either go taller than the house or lower, that either one would be okay. We just didn't want it to, we don't want it to look diminutive. I do need it to function as a 2-car garage. So instead of getting super wide, we did get longer to put the cars in tandem. But we just decided to go taller than the house because there seemed to be room to do that based on the other conversations. There were no restrictions. So that's all I have to say.
And is the ridge height of the barn, how much higher than the house is the ridge of the barn?
If you give me a second, I can tell you.
It's about 4 feet, but Chris can tell you.
Yeah, 4 or 5 feet, depending on where you start the baseline. The elevation of the first floor of the existing house is 55. And the ridge of the existing cape is approximately 21 feet above the finished grade at the foundation.
And so could you, I know, we're talking about whether the rear can be seen from a public way, but just so I understand the context of what I'm seeing here, it looks as though there's a recess in the back where the door is sort of pushed in sort of a deck within that recess. Is that what I'm looking at here?
And Michael, is there a particular drawing that you're looking at when you?
Yeah, drawing HDC 8.
Okay, my screen sharing is not working. I'm going to stop it and then restart, see if I can get this to work again. How's that? Do you see the rear elevation?
Yeah.
HDC 8?
And so is that recessed and there's a sort of a glass rail there? Is that?
Yes, it's a glass railing on a recessed balcony.
Okay.
What was the point of recessing it? Why not just a deck that goes out away from the back of the building?
We were trying to keep within the volume of the barn and without any additional extensions. So this is just a carved out space inside the volume of the barn under the roof.
You're losing some space on the second floor.
Well, converting it to outdoor space.
Okay. Any other commission members?
I didn't realize that the barn was to be so very close to the extension on the back of the house. I mean, to my mind, the extension overwhelms the original house as it is, and this only further, draws the eye away from the original house to all that extension.
What is that distance?
It overwhelms the original house for me.
Yeah, if I look on HDC 2,
That's what I'm looking at.
yeah, it's sort of strikingly large, at least in that view.
Yeah.
Hans, you were.
Oh yeah. Hey, thanks, Mike. Question for Chris and Bridgette. So yeah, I just want to piggyback on what Robert is bringing up here. You know, when we were looking at the addition off of the Cape, we were trying to do some interesting things here with that roof in order to, you know, downplay the size of that roof connection to the Cape, to make it not seem as long as it was. So my questions are following on what Robert is bringing up. And I know on number 2, HDC 2, you got a couple sheds that are there. Doesn't look like they're in the drawing. Is that true, or how should we think about the sheds?
Those are existing sheds that are going to be relocated. So I'm using
Okay,
the.
so they're going to be moved.
Yeah.
And we've got. Can you just give us the distances off of the corners? I can't really read them off of the sheet. It's kind of small numbers. I see like 23. And
And that's an 8-foot bump out, so it's 15 feet.
So 15 from. Can you just point on the diagram? Are you able to bring it up just so I know? I see a 23 on my sketch.
Yeah, the 23 looks like a dimension to the end of a walkway.
23 is to the corner that's visible from the street. I'm using my iPad as a screen mirror, so I don't have a cursor that you can see.
Okay, yeah, I can't really see what you're pointing at. Okay. Yeah, so I think what Robert was getting at and what my question would relate to, you know, is there enough space here between the structure and the house with the addition you're putting on to make it seem like this is not all one big unit? Because we were doing some things in order to, you know, for the addition off the Cape to make that roof not seem as long. And I want to make sure that that there's enough space here that we're creating 2 separate units. And I can understand the height on this being a little bit different from the Cape. I'm not as concerned about the height. I'm more concerned about one continuous mass and if there's enough of a break there between the two. So, you know, this might be a situation where some story poles could help out for all of us. I think it would help out for me.
And it does, just at least going by HDC2, I'll use Robert's word, overwhelm the rest of the structures on the property. It looks very large.
Tomas?
Yeah, so thank you, Mike. So I walked past it today, and I think that when you walk down Pond Street, you will be able to see this on an angle from the street. From a height-wise, I'm not really that worried about it because in the original drawings that were submitted as ideas, it appeared that there was a going to be a barn or a garage in the back that was probably going to be higher than the original Cape, but it was also going to be appeared to be a little bit more narrow as a one-car garage. So the height is not necessarily what concerns me. It was more the overall massing. So when I do the width of the existing garage and the shed, it comes out to 32 feet. I believe the original Cape is somewhere between 34 and 36 feet wide, so it's almost as wide as the original Cape. So the original, this massing from the front is even though the shed is partially hidden behind the house, it is a very wide garage as a one-car garage. And then second, the dormer it looks like a very dressed up garage to me as it relates to the more simple cape. And maybe a shed dormer instead might be more appropriate. And then also, I noticed that there's skylights there as well. Not something that we usually look at and approve. So that's just something that I wanted to bring up. Maybe something that would be, since it's a one-car or a one-door garage, maybe something that would be a little bit more narrow. Maybe, I don't know, the garage door appears to be 9 or 10 feet wide. Maybe it would be an 18-foot wide garage with a shed dormer off the side, so that the whole mass would be a little bit more narrow and not so overpowering as it related to the original front cape. And then where the length is today, the 36 feet, that's what I believe we'll be able to see when we walk down Pond Street. So I would concur with what Hunt said, that maybe a site visit and story polls might be appropriate as it relates to this thing. That's it.
If I could just add something.
Yeah.
The language that we're using and the design we're trying to accomplish here is not a garage, but a 19th century barn. So the proportions that we've given you are very typical of what you would see in a 19th century barn in any of the towns in the South Shore and all along Main Street in Hingham and in the other areas of the historic district. So the 24 feet is a fairly typical dimension that you would see in these types of barns. So I don't know that calling it a garage was our intention. It's intended to be a barn, which has a different style, a different volume, a different mass than the original, much older cape that was on the property.
And Christopher, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the front design where the door is slightly off-centered with the window on the side. I can completely relate to that. But it was just when I compared it to the original, I'm afraid that it's going to be very overpowering as it related to the more simpler cape in the front. That was my my comment. But I hear you. Thank you.
Hans?
Chris, just to follow on that. So, you know, on this HDC1 drawing, I get what you're describing here to Thomas. But just from this one vantage point, it's really difficult for us to see all the elements here and what's going on, you know? So that's why, the story polls here might give us a little bit of a better perspective in reviewing this. And I know that the addition's not built yet. So, for me, it's really important to understand, that part of it too. So, I think it would be helpful to see that back corner there, some type of pull up. I don't know if that wall is 12 feet or whatever. And then maybe just something off the back peak there of that addition, that's 21 feet high or something like that, just so we can see the perspective between where the house is going to end and where this barn is going to start. And, perhaps it all works and it's appropriate and it fits in well with the neighborhood and how these two are sitting on the property. But perhaps it makes sense that this is a little bit further back. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I would support the idea of story polls and a site visit to understand the mass in context of the neighborhood. And it might be fine. It might be that when I look at HDC2 and it feels overpowering, that might be not necessarily the case in the actual property. So I would reiterate and support as well the idea of story polls to really get a feeling for that in the neighborhood.
Okay, thanks, Justin. Any other commission members? Carol?
Hi. I can't help it but go back to my own house as a comparison, and our barn's ginormous compared to the house, and it's 1791. Looks very much like this from the front. The only thing my eye keeps going back to it as something a little incongruous is the window over the garage doors facing Pond Street. That would have been either a way to drop bales of hay in and out or something like that in an old barn. But that window seems out of proportion to the house, to the other windows in the addition. And I'd love more details on what kind of barn doors. Are they just literally wooden slat doors that slide across? Or is this an electric door that goes up underneath the floor above?
So the plan is this would be an overhead door
Mm-hmm.
on the garage level. And the concept of the large glass window above it was that was the hay door. So originally you would have had two hinged panels that would have allowed you to load hay. That's been retrofitted, like you see frequently, into just one single glass window.
Mm-hmm. And what will the facade of the garage doors look like? Is there
The doors are boards. I don't know if you can catch the.
no windows?
Not in these doors, no.
Lights? Okay. I don't share the concern about the size of it. To me, it looks like an old New England barn next to a little cape, but if others want to do a site visit, I'd love to do that, just to get a feel for it.
Okay. Thanks, Carol. Tracy, it looked like you were gonna.
Trying to organize my thoughts. What is the finished floor of the garage level of this barn?
Concrete.
Yeah, but what's the elevation? Sorry.
Oh, can you give me a second and I can look it up?
So I think I generally, I can be persuaded, especially after hearing Carol. My initial thought is it's big, and I'm looking at street view. The current driveway is flat, pretty similar to the house next door, which is a 1.5 story cape. This 8 Pond Street house is up on a little knoll. It's probably 3.5, 4 feet higher than the driveway. I look at the HDC one, it looks like everything's flat, which is not the case, but they shared an image here on the screen. Chris shared an image that did show the driveway kind of bending up a little bit. And again, I'm always going to look at these things in the context of the public realm and the neighborhood in general. I worry about it kind of being a little overwhelming to the house next door as well. So that's my initial reaction, which is why I asked what the finished floor of the proposed barn is, because I see the house is at 55.5 on HDC2.
The barn is 52.
Okay, so it is lower.
Maybe 53, 52, 53.
52, 53. So it's 2-3 feet lower than the house, yet it's still taller than the house. So it's a big structure. It's a tall structure.
I was wondering, sorry.
Go
I was
ahead.
wondering too if most of the barns and garages along here where we are have some kind of little skirt leading up to the barn door, even if it's not much of an elevation. Granite slabs, pavers, something which would have helped buggies and carriages roll into the barn. But are you saying this is really literally going to be ground level?
No, there'll be a small ramp up to the front door. Yep.
Okay, that makes it look more like an old barn too.
Tracy, did you have more thoughts?
Yeah, I guess I generally have a I'm sure I'm in the minority. I have concerns of trying to like replicate new things to be old things, and but I won't go any further.
Okay, thanks, Tracy. Ben, did you want to add anything?
Thanks, Mike. So I have a slightly different take. I think you've got a lot of classical elements here. I appreciate that with some modern twists. So for instance, that window in the hayloft above pretty much just nods the head. You're tipping your hat and saying that this is not original. We're going to pull some of the elements from the house into this. To Robert's point, I have a little bit of a concern about its proximity to the house. And I think story poles would be very helpful. Recognizing that this is pushed back, obviously, from the streetscape. So your eye may never catch the fact that this barn is taller than the house. Although I'm not convinced that that's a problem, because there are many, many, many examples of larger barns than the house on Main Street alone. You know, never mind all the side streets where you have those examples. So I'm not concerned with the height, but perhaps a proximity to the house. And I think I would only like to see that story pole, and that would resolve my concerns. But otherwise, I think this is an excellent job of an interpretation of a barn with a modern twist.
Okay, thanks, Ben. So I think what I'm hearing is, you know, some concern from the commission, just, you know, generally its size and proximity to the house. And I think the story poles, site visit and the story poles, I think we got to do that. I think it will help the commission to understand this potential structure in context of not only the existing house, but where the new addition will be. So I think with those story poles, if you can do that for the barn, that maybe shows, you know, where the eave takes and gets to the ridge, and then maybe a corner of where the new addition will be, I think will be helpful for us to see the scale of this in relationship to the house. Because I agree, you do see larger barns with smaller houses, but you know, we need to look at this particular instance in the context that immediately surrounds it, so that we can understand what it might be. So,
and could we have some indication of where the sheds will be moved to?
There are two of them currently, and only one of them is going to be moved. One of them is the one that you see from the street is the older shed. We don't know exactly how old it is. Maybe it was part of the original builder's shed, don't know. But we're going to be moving that just to the back of the property until we do our landscaping. We want to find a home. It'll probably be directly off the back of the house so that we can see it from the patio, the screen porch, that kind of thing. So it'll be like a little folly in the back, and we'll kind of revive that somehow. And we're very hopeful that we can do that. There's a small square shed behind that is not significant in any way historically, so we're not going to waste the time to move that, and we don't need that space either. So the first rectangular one, our intention, the builder thinks that it's doable, and we'll revive it later on. That won't be visible from the street once we move it, though. I'm pretty certain of that.
okay. And I guess I'll just ask the commission, because you know, if we've got to go out there, we've got to see it, but you know, we're talking generally proportions and windows and things like that. I know Tomas mentioned, I think it was Tomas who mentioned the dormer on the side and potential simplification of that dormer. Not sure if anybody else had some additional thoughts about that dormer and whether, whether there's a study to look at some other options. Hans?
Yeah, I think Thomas brings up a good point. We approved shed dormers off of the main house. Maybe something that looks like a shed off the barn might be interesting to take a look at, see if there's a drawing there. May look better as it is, not sure. Obviously, a classical barn would have nothing.
I wouldn't say obviously.
Well, it probably wouldn't.
I think that the A-frame dormer there is not uncommon.
Okay.
Well, go
Are
ahead,
there,
Tracy.
yeah, is there anything that's keeping you from tucking it behind the house a little bit more? Like the front corner is like right on that 15-foot setback. Like what's kind of driving the placement right now? I look at the neighbor 10 Pond Street and the garage, for lack of a better word, is really tucked behind the house. And, I appreciate the fact that you're putting this dormer and this little storage side off to the side that will be blocked from public view from the house. I appreciate those things, but is there anything can we get 18 feet? Can we get 20 feet off the property line? Is there something that's driving the location?
The site slopes upward as you move forward more to the rear. So the further you push it back, the higher it goes.
Not to the back. I'm talking. Try to tuck it
South.
behind the house a couple more feet.
Yeah, well, we're trying to maintain some lawn. So the idea is to have usable lawn space by offsetting the barn, not having it in the middle of a narrow lot, but offset to one side.
Okay.
And it's another thing we can look at
So where the
at
two
a site
sheds,
visit with the story poles.
right, where the two sheds are depicted on this plan is the intended lawn for the house, the backyard. And it would be bounded on two sides, one by the barn and one by the rear elevation of the house. And we were trying not to put the barn in the middle of the lawn to cut down that usable space.
Could you, the next time, next month or whenever you're here, could you update HDC2 to show where the shed you're trying to save is going to be located?
Sure.
Because I realize the one in the back is a newer shed that you're demoing. I would delete that from the plan and show the location of the new shed, just of the old historic shed.
And I think if you could just stake that out, at least a corner of where that may be, where you're proposing, I think would be helpful for the site visit too, so we get to understand all of this in context.
Right. I left them on there because the addition isn't put up yet, and that existing shed is a good reference point for where the new addition comes out to.
But you're just looking to push that to the face of the storage space on the new barn, right? To try to create a outdoor space there, right?
Yeah, we haven't made a final decision, but
Okay.
something like that, yeah.
Would the storage space that you have off the side, the 8 by 22, did you make any consideration to maybe put that in the back of the barn rather than off the side?
It's possible, sure. We didn't think it was, I keep losing my screen share, so I apologize here. So it's not advancing. I'm advancing here, but it's not advancing. So I have to stop and start it again.
Hey, Mike, while Chris is finding that,
Yeah, sure.
just real quick, I think you know, if they're going to demo that other shed, we just need to see something in an application that they want to demo it. You know?
Yeah, add that to the site plan for demolition, yeah.
Right.
The shed appears to be a modern shed, you know.
Yeah, Hans, a couple of us were out there yesterday, and it's like a 2x4 plywood shed from the 80s or so.
Yeah, I don't, it doesn't sound like there'll be an issue. Just to formalize the application that they want to take it down. That's all.
The reason the storage shed is on the side of the barn is access to that lawn area that we're trying to create. So it's got this barn doors that are hinged. You can see on the right-hand side there. And that provides access to the lawn area, storage for outdoor furniture, that kind of thing.
I think if you could consider trying that around back, I mean, that could help. I think what we're talking about with the proximity to the house, and the feeling of this crowding possibly the house. So if that was not there, maybe around back, you know, you wouldn't see it.
Answer the question? Yes, hi. What if we, yeah, so it is a convenience thing because it'll be for outdoor furniture and clearly it's just easier to access it from this side versus walking around the back. But what if we stepped it back? What if we stepped it back? Chris, I don't know how it's 22 feet. What if we push the front corner back, you know, several feet, 4 or 5 feet, like just to give it more breathing room in that way. I don't know if that affects, yeah, it'll be a little less storage, but I don't think it's the end of the world versus putting it in the back where it wouldn't be as convenient, but we can certainly consider it. But what if, so that corner comes back 4 or 5 feet?
I think it would be helpful. It would probably be an improvement on what's there. Okay, Carol, did you want to mention something?
Yeah, I'm just, I find it hard to tell from the sketches here because we're not standing out on the street, whether those skylights, which we don't normally allow, would show at all. If you're coming up, I think it'd be a site visit would be very helpful.
Yeah.
This 3D is a fairly accurate, quite an accurate representation of the topography, the adjacent buildings.
But I think in a real live site visit tells so much. I mean, we might find that the story poles say, yeah, that's about the size of a barn. That's not quite as jarring as it looks on paper.
Hans?
Mike, I just for clarification, I can't remember us approving any skyline on any structure visible from a public way.
No, we
haven't.
haven't. Yeah, that's not something we've done. And
So
I
the
think,
question is it visible?
It probably will be.
Yeah, you
I mean, I walked by today and yeah.
But
you can do Google Street View, Google Satellite. I bet it is visible, but I wouldn't make that call without a site visit.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think, you know, in the interest of time, I hope we've provided enough guidance and direction. And I think, you know, a site visit with story poles for the barn, marking the corner of the addition of the house and marking where you'd like the new or the existing shed to be relocated, I think will be helpful. So, and I think we've made some other suggestions to consider in the meantime. So I'm not sure, Andrea, when we want to do a site visit or whether you want to schedule that offline.
Well, let me just ask this. I sent right before this meeting dates for the upcoming year. And so the July date is the 9th. which would mean for the next meeting, it would be July the 9th. And so that would leave us probably with just the Saturday after 4th of July, the 5th, for an opportunity to do a site visit.
4th is open, Andrea.
Pardon me?
The 4th is open.
We have
Oh,
nothing.
yeah,
to
that's
do.
right. Nothing's going on.
So you're saying, well, the 4th is Saturday, right?
There you
I'm
go.
sorry. Yeah, Saturday. You're right.
Yeah.
Never mind.
What
We'll
about,
bring fireworks.
what if it were the 27th? The week prior? Is that-
Sure, we could do that if, I don't know if that gives you enough time, Christopher.
Well, I think that putting up story poles and a site visit requires more time than I need. Maybe it's up to you.
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
I'm fine with whatever date you select.
Okay, all right, that's
But
good.
I think he said that story poles aren't that hard.
Okay, thank you. So
It
the
would-
27th would be good, if that
27th?
works for everybody.
How about July, not June? July 27th.
Well,
No,
then,
June 27th.
June 27th
we-
for the site
If
visit.
we're able to do the June and the 27th, we can keep it on the dock for the next meeting and move
Right.
forward.
yes,
Great.
All right, well, let's do that.
All
If
right.
that's what you, the applicant, I say we do it. Okay, all right.
good, thank you.
All right, is there anything else on this one before we move on to the next application for 8 Pond Street regarding the windows? Okay. Application number 2 for 8 Pond Street, proposed replacement of 13 windows on the existing house. Could you walk us through that?
Yeah, I'm assuming you can see the elevations with the photographs of the existing house.
Yep.
So the 3 sides of the existing cape, the Pond Street side, the north and south gable ends, have double hung windows that I understand were replaced by the previous owner with 12 over 12s. We are proposing new wood double hung windows, 6 over 6, with flat casing and thick sills with extended horns.
They were there quite a while. Do you know when they were put in? I mean, the original owner. Mr. What's his name?
I'm told that the windows used to be 6 over 6s in the 70s, and the owners replaced them back then to 12 over 12s. And I don't know who, something with an L, I don't know their name, but anyway, they were 6 over 6s in the 70s, got replaced. So I'm not sure how recently Mr. Stewart replaced some of them, if not all of them, I'm not sure. I think he just replaced the upstairs windows, and he did put the 12 over 12s back in place there. So there have been, and I don't have any documentation, Mr. Stewart may, but I'm told by the neighbor to the right, Mr. Jones, that they used to be 6 over 6s at one point, and he thinks they were even 2 over 2s way back when his family lived in that house for some time. So we basically, I was in the house recently, and it occurred to me that those flat storms that are on there would preclude me from getting fresh air any time of the year when I didn't have them off and put the screens in. And I don't like that. I think that's a little suffocating. So those are not original storms. I know they look lovely. I thought they did as well until I walked in and tried to get fresh air. I couldn't. So it made me sort of reconsider wanting to have a stationary storm panel on any of the windows in the house. So I just thought we would seek out an opportunity to change them to more better functioning windows with half screens, and then maybe to also ask that we change them and they would be the same as the 6 over 6s that we're going to have in the new addition. So that was sort of the thinking behind this.
Okay, thank you. And so Ben, Tracy, and I were out at the site yesterday. We had a site visit, met with Ben Wilcox on site. And he had done his investigation into what he felt the history of the windows were. And I'll put Ben Burnham on the spot. If you recall the history, it's consistent with what I think Bridgette was just describing. But if you want to provide any more detail there for the commission, I think that'd be helpful.
Sure, no problem. Tracy, feel free to chime in if I get some things wrong. Here's my understanding from Ben Wilcox. Nothing in the original volume as it relates to the sash is original in the original volume. The frames are thought to be original, but the sash are not. And the history of the sash, based on some photographs at the state website and our own photographs, and perhaps maybe even Mr. Stewart had some photographs. Basically, it goes the following. It is believed that they were 6/6 originally. Then they went to 2/2. Then they went back to 6/6, and that was around in the mid to late 60s. There's a photograph showing 6/6. And then they went to 12/12 that you see now. I could tell you that the commission approved 2 windows on the gable end that faces the left-hand gable, that is. We approved 12/12s, SDLs, and those are still there. And I think on the opposite gable, there are 12/12s that are also fairly new. Ben Wilcox also pointed out, and it was interesting, there are a few sash are there that are 1 1/8 inches thick. And well, that would indicate an old window, but in fact it is not. That was a reproduction. So again, the frames are old, but the sash was reproduced to fit in the frame at 1 1/8 inches. And I think that sums it up.
Thank you for the summary, Ben. That's my recollection too. So,
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, is Ben Wilcox on the call? Ben, are you there? Okay, maybe not. Sorry.
okay, thanks, Andrew. Okay. So I'd like to open up to the commission members for any comments or questions.
I have a quick question. What is the dimension of the bottom rail? Only because, like, your elevations, it looks nice, but when I look at HDC 8.2, the bottom rail looks really tall.
This Doug Hanfield, this rep for Openings Millwork that sells LePage windows that we're using, is on the call, so he could answer some technical questions. This drawing right here is an illustration drawing. It's not meant as a shop drawing. It's not representative of the proportions of the window. This is just a diagrammatic with the dimensions. That's the window right there.
So
I'm guessing 2 1/4.
Doug, can you give us some insight on the dimensions?
Oh, he must have walked away. If you give me a minute, I can look it up.
yeah, that's my main concern.
Chris, you there?
Sure, Mr. Hanfield, sure.
Yeah, Doug, what's the dimension of the bottom rail on the double hung XL?
So from the bottom where it hits the sill to the visible glass is 3 1/4 inches. And it's 2 7/8 the actual flat spot.
So 2 7/8 is visible?
2 7/8 is below the bottom of the putty angle to the bottom of the sash is 2 7/8.
So, Mr. Chairman, when you were out with Tracy to take a look at these windows, what is currently in there? Are those true divided wood windows? And were they replaced in kind back when they were replaced? Do you know?
So the windows on the first floor are true divided light. The windows that have been replaced on the second floor are simulated divided light.
I remember we did that because they had a hard time taking the storm off and on. I remember we made an exception for that, yes.
Yes, that's correct. But the remainder of the windows are
It was a
true.
cleaning issue.
What's that, Hans?
It was a cleaning issue.
Yes.
And we had a lot of difficulty finding the right sizes in a true divided light for that size window for some reason. With the mutton size, remember the muttons were a big problem, getting the muttons to match up.
Yeah.
And we couldn't find something that was manufactured in a true divided light in that mutton size. It was a narrow mutton, if I remember.
And so as part of this application, you're also proposing to replace those newer windows on the second floor?
Yes.
Do we know how old the storm windows are? The wooden storms?
I don't
I'm
know.
not sure. Ben, did you get any sense of that while we were there?
I asked briefly when, I did ask Ben if he thought that those might be original, and he thought no. I think the glass size is just too large to be original. Right, so maybe those were put on when the house was converted to 2/2.
I have a question related to the second floor windows that is a code issue, and I don't know if you guys have dealt with this before. This is a bedroom, and those windows don't qualify as egress windows, and those are the only windows in that bedroom. Has it been your experience that we should keep that windows those size and that it's permitted by the building authorities in Hingham?
I think that would be a question you'd have to ask the building department. You know, typically they'll be the ones who will flag whether there's a code related issue about replacement, and I'm not sure what their policy is on that.
So it hasn't come up before then?
Well, in many cases, historic takes precedent. So in this case, it being visible from a public way, I don't know how they'll feel about you actually changing them. If you change them, then you may have to go with a larger sash, but then that would again mean you come back to us. So I do believe the historic will take precedent.
An egress window would be significantly larger than what's there now.
Yeah, do you know how far off you are?
Probably 6 inches or more.
In width or width and height?
Both.
It's a bedroom on both the north and south elevation?
There's a bedroom on the other end too, but we're doing a new shed dormer in the back, and we're able to provide an egress window there.
Understood. Thanks. So it's just the north elevation?
Yeah.
Hey, Ben, would the code have changed in the last 2 years?
No.
Not for egress size, no.
Yeah, it'd get bigger if anything, but no.
So I'm dating myself, but in the 6th edition of the code book, it was stated on the first or second page that historic takes precedent.
My question, are any of these windows inoperable right now?
I know I opened one of each of the upstairs bedroom windows. Downstairs, I I didn't try because when I wanted to open the dining room, which is not relevant here because it faces the back, they didn't open. They were screwed in or something. But the ones in the front of the house, I didn't even try because I realized the storm panels were affixed to the exterior and I wasn't going to get the fresh air, so I didn't even try. So I can't say.
So with the Stewarts, I guess we'll just say the same thing. And, you know, we've encouraged the homeowners to evaluate, you know, if there's any issue with the windows to restore, refurbish, whatever you can do before replacement. I guess you're saying they're about 60 years old. Is that what you guys think? They're in the 60s?
Yeah.
So that would be the first thing we would tell you to do.
I think it was my understanding that the 12 over 12s that are there now were put in by the Stewarts.
Yeah, the 12 over 12s are newer than the 60s. The
upstairs, the 4 windows upstairs, we did, you know, obviously we went through a number of different iterations before we arrived at what's in there right now with them. This was
we have a picture from 1967 that shows all the front windows 6 over 6. They're now 12 over 12. So we know the windows have been replaced since the late 60s.
Okay.
But if the house is from 1756, wouldn't the 12 over 12 have been more appropriate than the 6 over 6? With a smaller glass size?
So dating back, the Ben Wilcox's best guess is it was a 6 over 6.
Okay.
Thomas, I agree with you though, for that age of the house, the 12 over 12 was more likely.
They think maybe in the 60s, but that still makes them 60 years old.
Mike, the other thing, just to add on, is that just to maintain some consistency here is, you know, we've encouraged the homeowner to maintain a true divided light if in the event the windows are inoperable, especially on the front facades and viewable from a public way. New construction, definitely SDL is an option.
And so I think, you know, to that point, I think if the applicant would consider true divided light on the front facade and the 2 lower windows on the main house that you can see from the public way, you know, I think that would be more in line with, you know, the intent of replacing, you know, true divided light for true divided light.
So for true divided light, then you need full storms because there's no sort of efficiency rating with those, I guess, is there?
You would need storm. Some windows have energy panels. I'm not sure if the LePage windows do, and maybe that's something for Mr. Handfield, if he was able to provide any guidance on options for the windows as true divided light.
So LePage can offer a true divided light, but it's kind of a retro. It's an SDL bar applied on either side of a single glazed window. I don't know if that's something that you've seen before. We've had approval on Nantucket with it. Hello?
Yep, we can hear you. Can you explain that again? I'm not sure I followed you.
So LePage can do a single glazed sash with SDL bars applied on either side of it. So they're tight to the glass. And we have had approval on Nantucket with that, right on Easy Street.
Okay.
I could share some pictures if that's what you would need, but it was a 5/8 inch putty bar to the exterior, which is pretty typical.
Yeah.
Is that the putty glaze SDL?
Correct. So it's just a very simple bevel, 5/8 inch wide.
But Doug, that wouldn't be significantly different from the SDL on the exterior. It's exactly the same profile.
Be the same profile, but you wouldn't have the insulated glass with a spacer. It'd just be a single sheet of glass. And then for a storm, we do have a wood storm screen combo available that hangs from stainless steel hangers, like a traditional hanging wood screen, or it's a regular half or full aluminum frame screen.
Well, I think that would be more in keeping with, modernizing what's there and replacing what's there, but keeping with, the traditional exterior of the house.
Sure. And one other thing, these are a non-tilt window. They're pretty different than your typical Marvin and Anderson Peller out there. So it's got a concealed balance. So when you're looking at the exterior of the window from the street, it's an all wood jamb. There's no tracks. It's just a very simple wood frame that's visible from both the inside and the exterior.
And is that on both the SDL and the sort of the quasi SDL true divided
Correct.
light?
Yep, be the same balance system. Yep, it's a concealed balance. It's not a typical block and tackle balance.
I would say that the difference that we're talking about between their LePage SDL and the true divided light is very subtle. So the photograph that you're looking at now is insulating glass with the putty bar. And it's right there too. It's going to look very, very similar to their single glaze.
And
So I'm not sure what you're showing us, but we see building photographs on the screen.
So I guess I'm unsure what the concern is with these windows being SDL, because they're visually very, very similar to the true divided light, or the LePage's true divided light. From the street, you couldn't tell. You could tell if you walked up and looked at it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the intent is that, we're replacing in kind what's there. Obviously, we want a better performing window when replacing, but the intent is the first step is to repair and restore. I think we've determined that these windows are not really candidates for doing that. So I think then, when we're talking about replacement, the goal is to do the best we can, replacing in kind what is there. And I think, it's the true divided light that gets us there. And I'm interested in the other product that from LePage, which sounds like it could be a good fit for this project.
The true divided light product.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I also don't believe that we have just in a historic building of any kind replace windows with SDL windows in the old historic part of it. It's always been just norm to do it in the new edition, and then have true divided lights in the original portion of it. So if there's a window or two that cannot be replaced or repaired, those one or two windows would then be replaced with a true divided light, so that the original portion always kept the true divided light.
Hans?
Hey, just to add to that, I think Mr. Stewart may have even looked at this a Marvin Nantucket true divided light I can't remember the decision he came out on, and you guys may be familiar with that model, but might be worth something exploring too. It could work. I can't remember the mutton sizes and the sizes that came in and the lights and all that, but I think it was something that was used out in Nantucket, and you guys mentioned it, so it might be worth looking into.
So is it fair to say there's no objection to storm windows on top of the true divided light?
Correct.
I think that's been the practice.
Bridget?
So that means I need to put panels like that back on the house. Storm panels like that.
It would be your option to put either those antique or older hanging storms on, or you can do an aluminum storm. Some of them are a little less obvious than others. They sit within the casing.
Well, that would be a shame. Okay, that's a little bit of a struggle for me because these panels, as I said at the start, they don't allow fresh air in the house unless you get your ladder outside and take them off the window. So I don't know how inclined I'd be to keep them on a lot. So anyway, I don't know what that's worth, but.
So there are manufacturers that offer a storm that sits within the casing, and it is something you can adjust from the interior. You can move the panels up and down to get fresh air.
With the aluminum frames.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, I have those currently in my house. I hate them, but they're very low profile, and I understand that. But I just don't know if I'd like to see them here. Okay. Okay.
Are aluminum triple tracks prohibited? No.
No.
I don't want them. They get really dirty.
I think on balance, what I'm trying to argue, and I'm trying to understand I understand the goals of repair and replace and replace in kind, but the result of a true divided light window covered by a storm window, triple track aluminum frame, versus a simulated divided light with putty glaze, mutton bars, wood window, finished beautifully, whether it's not as authentic as the true divided light would seem to be on balance a better solution.
So I'm looking at the LePage, the cut sheet, and this is on the simulated divided light. And so there's a putty glaze on the simulated divided lights. Is that what I understand from this cut sheet?
Yes, it's a profile that matches an antique window with putty glazing.
Okay. And do those, and so they do have, I'm reading the cut sheet, so they do have black spacer bars within the glazing unit.
Yes.
Okay.
If we could even get you a window, Doug, I don't know if you have the ability to drop off a window for people to look at. That might be a possibility.
I could do it for the date when they go out to view the story poles.
I think that's a great suggestion. And if you had samples of both windows that we're talking about here,
Okay.
I think that would be a great suggestion.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So does that sound like a plan then? We'll take a look at the samples at the site visit on the 27th.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else anybody wants to add regarding this application? We good? Okay. All right.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Bridget. Thank you,
Good night.
Christopher. Okay. The next hearing tonight is 93 Main Street for modifications to existing hardscape.
Hi, folks.
Hey, Sean.
How's everybody doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, doing well. Well, thank you for doing this. You guys are doing a really nice job in a challenging situation, and it can't be easy to do any of this stuff remotely, so thank you for doing it. So I'm Sean Papich, Landscape Architecture, 222 North Street in Hingham. We're working at 93 Main Street, and the homeowners are new folks that are moving into town from Sudbury. Jennifer and Tim Hunt. I don't know that they're on the call tonight. I know they had some other things going on, so I don't know that they're on the call tonight, or on the Zoom. So I can go through what we're proposing to do. I know you've got some images there that are existing conditions, images, pictures taken from Main Street and Elm Street. Things that are probably of primary importance to the homeowners here involve the overall concept. In 93 Main Street, there is a driveway that runs right there off of Main Street to the left of the house if you're facing Main Street, and then runs all the way around the house, the carriage house, and back onto Elm Street. So what they're hoping to do is to remove a substantial amount of asphalt at the rear part of the property and turn it into lawn for play area for children. And it's just in the back part, they call it I suppose you'd call it the somewhat south part of the property.
Excuse me,
yeah.
Sean, sorry to interrupt. Would you like to share your screen?
Oh, I don't have that
Okay,
document with me.
That's fine. We've all got it in front of us. Just wanted to ask.
Do you want to do you ever put those up for me?
I
Or
can
no?
do that. I can do that. Give me 1 second. Yeah, I can do that.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Sean, just real quickly to help us as we walk through this, do you have an existing condition plan?
The plan is we do have an existing conditions plan. Well, it's not so much. It's a proposed conditions plan. So much of what's on here is pretty close to existing in terms of the framework. There's not an existing condition survey.
Okay.
Andrea, I think will be pulling up the plan here shortly in the images. If you remember the house or know the house, it's the blue one, the corner of Main and Elm Street. While she's getting that pulled together, I'll come back and walk you through it, but at least explain what we're maybe trying to do here. Along the retaining walls that border the property, there's one right on Main Street, and then there's the one that goes down Elm Street. There are fences on that, both of those, they're different. One is essentially a baluster on Main Street. Now there's a baluster on the porch, which is intended to remain, everything on the house remains the same. But the homeowners were hoping that the baluster that sits out on the retaining wall, which they feel, and I feel also, that it feels a little funny, a little redundant to have the two balusters stacked side by side. And when you see the existing conditions photos, hopefully that'd be helpful to see. And so they would like to just remove the baluster on Main Street that's on the rail, that's on the wall. It's out on the sidewalk, essentially, the Main Street sidewalk. The picture you've got up right now is along Elm Street, which is a kind of a wide, flat picket with a scallop. I don't know when that was put in, but I don't think it was a long, long time ago. And they also wanted to just remove that fence and just leave the retaining wall and do plantings. So for the fence elements, it's more a case of removal and not construction. For the fences that sit on the retaining walls, on the stone walls. The other, there should be another photo of the front, if you, unless you also have it there too in your own files. There's a picture that looks down the driveway, then a picture that looks right at the front facade. So again, that baluster that sits retaining wall, they were hoping to remove that. That leaves a more clear shot of the front porch and the house. Front porch remains the same, the house remains the same. As you go down the driveway, the other bigger move is to take, because we've removed the loop drive, or we're proposing to remove the asphalt in the back that connects the two driveways, that really creates the loop, and return it to lawn. We were intending to widen out the backup area around behind the house, essentially, coming out of the existing garage doors, so that they can back up there and park a car, or back up and go back out to Main Street, because they won't be using the loop anymore. In doing that, we need to put a retaining wall that we're saying is about 3 to 3.5, maybe 4 feet tall, to hold that up. And we were going to, intended to use a New England fieldstone retaining wall to do that. That's along essentially the kind of southeast side of the property line, straight behind where the existing garage doors are now. Also in doing that, they wanted to introduce a granite cobble apron right at the edge of the retaining wall. It would match their other granite cobbles they've already got on site next to the garage and out by the street that exists today. Also, we're intending to do some granite edging around the auto court. Everything will remain in asphalt other than the granite accents. The other hardscape elements on the property that they were intending to do are, there's currently an existing, coming out of the carriage house, there's currently a concrete paver, kind of beigey colored concrete paver terrace that comes out and meets the asphalt driveway loop. Well, when we remove that asphalt, that will become lawn. And they wanted to change the concrete pavers to bluestone with lawn joints. So more of a softer look. I don't believe that that's visible from the public right of way, but I wanted to have it on the plan and show you. There you go, something a little like that. Also behind the house, which again, I really don't know how visible that is. Right behind the garage, there is a concrete slab that I think used to house a spa, as well as those same concrete pavers connecting to the driveway. And the intent was to remove the concrete slab and replace it with softscape, plantings and lawn, and then take the concrete pavers and change those to stone, to bluestone, as well as a pathway that runs between the carriage house and the driveway is also concrete paver. And they wanted to change those to a bluestone landing with stepping stones in bluestone. On the north side of the property, got a dog that's bothering me here, sorry. Back on the north side of the property, on the Elm Street side, there's a brick patio that they wanted to change into bluestone, expand it by a few feet because it's a little narrow. There's some slate stepping stones going to the existing gate out on Elm Street, and they wanted to swap those out to a bluestone stepping stone. The slate's kind of the purple and greenish stepping stones. In terms of the description of all the hardscape, I know that you may or may not have been able to see it on the shared screen of the plan, but you must have the plans with you at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
That covers the hardscape pieces that we're proposing to do. There's other landscape pieces there. There's a very large slope. It's all mulch that we're going to take and transplant probably 80% of that plant material throughout the site. There's some really nice plant material. It's just really spread out. So we'll probably use about 80% of it. Keeping some of the existing trees right by the carriage house too. When you look at the plan there, hopefully you've been able to kind of follow along without a cursor taking you through that. You can see that as you come down the driveway off of Main Street, past the left-hand side of the house. That's the retaining wall. You'll see it from Main Street. It would be fairly subtle from Main Street. You'll see an edge of it, which is about, call it maybe 6 feet in length, 6 or 7 feet in length. You'll see that edge returning up the slope. And then you'll see another edge returning back at the far end of the auto court. So the big idea was really to get rid of a lot of the asphalt, green it up for play area, as well as simplify those outer edges, because we feel like they're kind of conflicting with the view to the house, and they don't feel appropriate on top of the retaining walls. That's probably the relatively reasonable summary of all of it. I apologize I wasn't able to follow it along on a cursor on this screen with you. If there are any questions about each of the elements, because it may have been tough to follow them?
Yeah, I do have a couple of questions. So in regard, if I kind of start at the driveway entrance on Main Street, the piers at around the edge of the driveway and the stone wall on either side of the driveway are staying unchanged, correct?
Correct.
And then the existing edging that goes up the driveway on one side and the small existing wall on the other side are staying.
Correct. Yep. Exactly. Yep.
Okay. And then as just kind of backing up again down the driveway and down Elm Street, the driveway that sits behind the carriage house already exists.
Correct. Already
stopping it at the corner of the carriage house.
Correct. It seemed to make sense to still have that as a little bit of parking. So we're leaving that stretch from Elm Street to the back of the carriage house. We're leaving that in place and just salvaging some cobbles and having it as a finished edge there.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
Do we have any idea how old the fence on Main Street is, that frontmost fence that runs along that stone wall?
I don't have an age on that. I think when we were looking at that, the homeowner just really felt, and I agreed, that it feels really heavy-handed against the facade of the house. I don't think it's that.
When I look at it, I mean, it looks like the house would look better without it. So, and I'm trying. I grew up right near this property.
Oh, that's great.
And I'm trying to recall as a child whether that fence was there, and I can't remember.
I didn't see it in any of the old photographs that I've seen, but I'm sure there's many. You know, this thing is such an old and iconic house.
Yeah.
Down that I don't know that exactly the age. There's got to be hundreds of photos of this house.
Yeah, I know that the Elm Street fence once upon a time was just completely decrepit, and that's. I know I personally won't be sad to see that fence go away. Yeah. I think that got, upgraded from a really crummy, old, broken down wooden fence, but I just can't recall what that front fence was.
Carol? You're on mute, Carol?
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I?
No, I want to get in there. I'm sorry, but I think we need to back up to the beginning. I don't see a garage on the map that we're looking at, the specs we look. Is that what you're calling an auto court? Is that the garage? Not the carriage house, obviously. Where's the garage?
The carriage house is essentially the garage. That's right. I mean, there's no separate garage here. The auto court is just paving.
Let me jump in. The garage is actually at the end of the house. It's not labeled a garage, but you can see it, I think.
Yeah, I'm back now. I think I lost you guys. I think I lost you for a while. The garage is, yes.
Look, there's an apron. There's a cobblestone apron which is in front of the garage, which is attached to the house.
Point at it, or is not the carriage house and is not the auto court?
Correct. It's right next to the auto court at the back of the house, the back of the main house, is where the garage is now. And so the carriage house has been repurposed and doesn't really have any, it's got.
Right. And there's no way to get a car in there. Yeah.
Correct. Exactly.
Okay, that was my first question. I still don't see a garage on my thing, but I'll find it.
It is in the back of it is attached, and it's in the back of the main house. You'll see an existing cobble apron that's listed as thank you, Chair. Existing cobble apron, so that's where the garage exists now.
Okay, it's not labeled garage.
No,
I'm not
it's
losing
just
my
part of
eyesight.
Yep.
Okay, and the carriage house confuses me. I went all around the property today just from the street looking at everything, and it doesn't look this shape. It looks like there's two more big components. They're all painted that pretty blue, but it isn't shaped like this. It has like another part with a cupola on top of it.
Well, I think that footprint is accurate.
Are you sure? Look at the picture that you're showing right now at the top on the left, I mean on the right. There's like 3 different buildings attached and one has a cupola on it.
Well, I know, but the footprint just shows the overall outline of that structure that's all connected. So in the plan view, we didn't show any gables or cupolas or anything like that. We just showed the L shape of the, so, thank you, Sherry. So that's that one piece you see from Elm Street. And then it goes up to the piece that is essentially the other 2 pieces that are attached to what's existing as driveway now. But you can see that other return where the cursor is now is where the return is on the far right side of the picture on the.
That's the part with the cupola?
Well, let me see. Yes, it is, correct. That's correct. Yeah. So that's just the footprint of the overall structure.
Is this a whole separate house? Is that what we're looking at?
No, it's.
No way to get a carriage in it.
Well, it would have been a carriage house at one point. Yeah, it's just.
Do we know it's old? Do we know the date of any of this?
Of the carriage house?
Yeah.
Call the date, but we're not doing anything to the carriage house. We're not touching anything on the carriage
I'm just questioning the accuracy of what we're looking at. It doesn't look anything like that.
The plan view did not? The plan? Yeah, the plan view is accurate.
Everything that's painted blue belongs to this property. That same blue.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and then to go the other direction, out at the entrance from Main Street going in the driveway.
Yeah.
There's 2 posts of granite on either side.
Correct.
Is the one on the left, is that a property line going straight back, or do they own the land up a bit above it?
There's a property line that is, there's a property line right there to the left of the column, left of the square column. That's correct.
That's the property line.
If you're, yes.
So when you're standing there looking at it, there's a flagpole and a lot of green grass. Is that actually on the church property next door?
I don't know if there's another parcel in between there that happens to be theirs or not. We're not proposing any work on that parcel. But I don't know if that's a separate but attached parcel.
Okay.
Could be, but we're not proposing anything there. I mean, so.
Sean, if I could just, I'm sorry, Carol, Sean, if I could just step in. I think what Carol is asking is that flag and the grass that the flag is on part of the property?
When you say the flag, yeah, the flag is not, well, the flag's across that property line. So it's not a part of the parcel that we're working on. So
Is it there?
that's correct. That's
It belongs to 93.
That
Or does it belong to 93 or to the church?
it might belong to the church. It's not. It's not a part on the property lines within the property lines that you see here. So it might belong to the church. I don't know.
Okay.
We're not working on that piece. We're working from the property line in. So we're working with, we're leaving that cobble edge the same on the driveway, leaving the column, leaving the wall on the right the same, and the wall on the right-hand side of the driveway the same. So that parcel that's to the left that has the flag is another parcel. Whether or not it's belongs to the 93 Main Street property as a separate one, or whether or not it belongs to the First Parish, I don't know for sure.
Okay.
But I'm not planning anything for that flagpole or anything like that. I'm not proposing anything.
So their purpose in taking down the fence is to put up 14 to 16, I lost count, pines.
Well, there aren't no pines. There's no pines, but they're going to be essentially going to be doing juniper and
Evergreen.
Western arborvitae, correct, evergreens. There's existing juniper that are there, and they would
But
like
it looks
to
like about another 14 of them.
Yeah, it'd be something like that. Yep.
Right. So our guidelines, to quote them, landscaping that obscures historic structures will not be approved.
So some of that landscaping already there? How much?
Yeah,
of
some of
that-
that's already there. You've already got existing juniper, or the large spruce in the corner. And then you have 1, 2, 3, 4 large existing junipers in addition to that, as well as other plantings. You've got another kind of blue spruce back in the corner by the carriage house. Currently, there are 2 cherry trees on the sides of the gate, which last we spoke, they felt like they may want to just go ahead and leave those for now. So in that case, they might propose to not do the handful of evergreens on the left and right side of that gate up of Elm. So they were going to intend to hold on to the cherry trees for now.
That's
May
nice.
I jump in real quickly? I'm confused, and maybe Andrea, you can give me clarity on this. I thought that the softscapes, plantings, that kind of thing was out of our jurisdiction. So I'm confused on obscuring the historic property and what Carol brought up.
Carol's right. We very seldom run across this, but we don't approve landscaping that, elements that will obscure the house.
Okay, that's good to know.
And that is the one and only time that we get involved.
Gotcha. All right, good. That's good. Thank you. I have a couple of questions if it's a good time to pop in here.
Sure.
I wonder, I think like an existing site plan would have been really helpful just to compare the driveway access. It appears to me that this new driveway is kind of on a straighter directional than the original driveway, but kind of curves back and around the house. So I feel like in the hopes of actually reducing your pavement, you might be increasing the visibility of the pavement from the main street. So that's one concern. then I'm also curious to know if there are photographs. I know we don't get the, I can't remember the name, what they're called, the B something or others. Andrea, what are those?
Oh, the Form B.
The Form B. That might reveal some photographs of the balustrade fencing on the front, and whether originally this home had a fence at all on top of the stone wall, or it that was an addition later, because that's a big change for the town. That's a big one. So, and for the home in general, it isn't an ornate house, and while today's I might prefer the stone wall balustrade gone, I think we got to respect what was there originally. And also, I'd wonder if there was a fence along the Elm Street originally, and what that, if we have photographs of that to share.
Can I just say there's so many photos and old paintings of this house because it's directly across from Ship Church. So you go up Elm Street about halfway up, you turn around, and you're aiming at Ship Church, and this house and its fence on the side show up in tons of old paintings, lots of photographs. I mean, I think we could ask a little help from Historical Society to do a little research and tell us how old it is. That shouldn't be too hard to do.
Plus, once I can get into the office and get the Form B, that may help us out a bit.
I'm certain that the baluster and the fences were not original to the house. I had the Form B. I'll have to find it back at the office also. But I'm certain that it's not original to the house. In terms of landscape treatment obscuring the house, there's some of the existing juniper now, as you can see. Is there a limitation? There's also the cherry trees that are pretty tall there too. Is there a limitation as to what you can do between those trees? Or is there something I can go on if there's an argument that you don't want more evergreen trees? And maybe we wait till everybody speaks, I don't know. I want to try to frame this out and understand it a little bit.
I think we're trying to understand whether proposed additional plantings would wind up obscuring the house ultimately.
Right.
And also, I'm curious about the motivation behind removing the fence to then put plantings for. I'm assuming it's for privacy. So I'm wondering what the fence versus the plantings accomplishes for the homeowner.
Aesthetics is one thing. Certainly, is what they don't think that the fence looks good for starters. They think it looks pretty rough. They don't like the style of it either. And they'd rather see it green. In terms of that's along Elm Street. Along Main Street, it feels like a lot of visual clutter. So the baluster backed up to another baluster or out in front of it, we feel detracts from the architecture. And so the intent for that is because it has a negative impact on the architecture, the historic architecture. Now, I'd be replaced with just a little low 18 to 24 inch height evergreen shrub or something along those lines. So that's the intent for along Main Street. So two pretty good reasons in my opinion. There was a question about removing the asphalt driveway that wraps around it. There was a comment on that. From a site planning standpoint, it makes sense to try to get some lawn back for the function that they want, which is play area, recreation area. We need it if we're going to back up out of the garage and then go back down to Main Street once we've cut off and gotten some softscape into the property. We need it for turnaround space. So that's why we take that back a little ways off of the existing driveway edge. So the existing driveway edge, you can at least see the dash line that shows that outer edge. That's where the existing driveway exists today. All of the other driveway to the front and on the side, which is primarily the most visible portion of it going back from Main Street, about 100 feet, and even more for that driveway, 110 feet, remains the same. So I don't think that that's a major impact when it comes to view from Main Street, in my opinion. I think removing asphalt in this situation is a really positive thing, just from a common sense and a standpoint of site planning, function for the homeowners and function for the property. Removal of concrete pavers or stone, I think that's something we would almost always want to do. And also to lighten it up a little bit.
So I think, any other commission members' thoughts? Hans?
Hey, Sean, just a quick clarification. Up front, you said 18 to 24 inch evergreen type.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, so just, you know, I think what you're hearing from everybody, it's a pretty important, actually very important home in the center of town. Right. That really starts the historic districts as you head up Main Street. So critical house. You know, wouldn't want to see those front shrubs growing 5, 6, 8 foot. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think obscuring that front porch or front row windows will be problematic. Yeah. But I mean, we can't get out there with the hedge clippers after they go in. You know.
I agree, but I think an 18 to 24 inch shrub doesn't obscure that at all. I think that would be, it's lower than what you've got for the railing there.
I agree, Sean. I think that would work. That would work well and be very appropriate for the front. You know, the other thing we could find out is I don't know when the rear additions were put in, if they are, you know, very old and historic, but I think the critical element here is, you know, preserving the views of the front structure, the original part of the house. So maybe there's some things we can do with the plantings and the taller evergreens that you're recommending for towards the rear of the house on Elm Street. Everything else I think is very appropriate, Sean.
Okay. Thanks, Hans.
Can I just point something out, Hans? You're talking about small shrubs. It says on the plot, proposed evergreen tree.
We were talking about Main Street, Carol. On Main Street, we were doing low shrubs there, low, small boxwoods.
That's not the stone wall, that's new things?
No, that's about right behind the stone wall. So if you're on Main Street and you're looking straight at the house, there's a railing, the baluster we're talking about, and then there's a mix of shrubs behind it even. There's some other stuff behind it, as well as shrubs in front of the house. And those are boxwood, same. But we're talking about low shrubs right there, little low, 18 to 24 inch height shrubs there.
In total height and full grown?
Yeah, it'd be 24. Yeah, those are low boxwoods. But it'd be smaller than what that baluster is as it exists today.
Boy, I'd be willing to bet that baluster's been there a very long time. We've been here 50 years and I remember seeing it when we first got here. I think we need to check with the historians about all that.
There've got to be pictures.
Thomas?
There are.
Thomas, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So I drove by today and I stopped and I actually looked at the fence in the front of the house. It appears to me that that fence in the front of the house is, the railings are old, the balusters are old, the posts have all been replaced. But it appears that the posts are the only things that's been replaced. And everything else looks old and originally, at least to me, I used to live in a house from 1832 and we had a small fence, a little bit similar to that was original to the house. There was some repair done to it. It looks like it's probably done in mahogany or something to that extent, which leads me to believe that the other, I mean, walking around knocking on it, it didn't feel like or didn't look like there was severe rot or anything like that as it related to the fence on Main Street. So I would be very concerned just getting rid of that fence and replacing it with smaller boxwoods. When it comes to the fence on Elm Street, I don't see anything that's historic as it relates to that fence. And as if the applicant, instead of maybe putting in evergreens, would want to put in something that's a lower bush that could be a privet or something to that extent, I would certainly be open to something like that. And then in addition, with the auto court that's there, Catherine had mentioned that it looked like a lot of asphalt, and I might tend to agree with that. Would they maybe be interested in putting in sort of a softer material? Would they, is there something where they could put in, I don't know, like an asphalt, but then maybe do something with stones that's sitting in the asphalt so that the whole look of it might be a little bit softer in general? I don't have any objection to the auto court at all as it is, except for the amount of asphalt. So would they be open to possibly a softer material? Everything else I think is a great improvement and makes a lot of sense. I'm always excited when somebody wants to take out a driveway and replace it with lawn. I think that's always exciting. So those are my comments.
Tomas, let me at least answer on the auto court. They still want to use that for recreation, so use that for, you know, skateboard.
Yeah, that would be tough if they did anything different.
Yeah, and that's
and now, it might not even be that visible if they put in the cobblestone apron in front of it. That might obscure the whole thing.
That's a weak.
Yeah. Do you know what the height difference is from the street up to where that apron would be? Does it go up a little bit? It appears so.
It's up a little ways. It's probably up about 18 inches from the sidewalk.
Okay. So it would be mostly apron, the cobblestone apron that one would see.
Yeah, and that's actually, it's going to be about a 6 foot wide apron there in depth. So it's got a little bit of chunk to it. It's still going to be a nice cobble.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. Then I have no objections to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other commission members?
Yeah, I notice on the proposed plan, the HDC landscape plan, it looks like along Elm Street, there are 2 proposed trees. And I'm just looking for the word proposed on the plan, and I see only 2.
Those are existing trees that are there. Those
I see some that are labeled existing trees, but there's proposed evergreen tree towards Main Street. I see 1. And proposed evergreen tree is that meant, I'm trying to understand how many new plantings I should take away from the drawing that was submitted.
So
right along Elm Street. I'm just limiting my question at the moment. Right along Elm Street.
Yes, Justin. Along Elm Street, we had evergreens. You'll see them with the like the cross symbol in it, or the other kind of radiating lines. Those are all proposed to be new.
Yeah. So everywhere I see that symbol, it's a proposed new tree.
That symbol, yes, correct. And then the ones that have the larger circles in the middle of them are some existing trees.
Yep.
right by the carriage house. And then you see the other existing ones that are kind of spaced out along that Elm Street that are in the picture that we have for you. Those are the other upright evergreens that are there.
Just so that my interpretation of that is I probably would expect those to count them up, that eventually the house would be obscured.
From Elm Street,
From Elm Street, it's just,
yeah, from Elm Street, you'd have, from Main Street, you don't get any, it's not obscured at all. From Elm Street, it is.
and from downtown, if you're walking up Main Street and
Yeah.
It might be helpful to actually know what type of plant and the habit of that plant and what we can expect in the next, amount of time, because it's just a proposed evergreen, but they all have different,
right, there's
So-
a wide range.
Well, so the existing junipers that are there, the existing upright junipers are there, we were going to match those. And then the intent was to also use, primarily match those. The other ones were Western arborvitae. There's only, there's 3 of those and a few more, 2 more over by the carriage house.
What is the habit of the juniper? How high does that get in maturity?
Juniper is like what you see there. It's going about 16 feet to 18 feet tall there in the picture, the one that's there on, not the one in the far corner on the left. That's a blue spruce, which will keep
Pretty
on
big.
growing. The other upright junipers are the ones you see in the picture there. And the intent is to match those. Not, they won't be that tall going in. They're shorter going in. In the there are 2 cherry trees I was mentioning, one on the left of the gate, one on the right of the gate, that are existing. And in the last few days, the last few days they've talked and got a hold of me and said, maybe we'll just want to leave those. So they were intending to leave those 2 cherry trees now, which they decided on in the last couple of days. So the intention would certainly be for less of the evergreens. In fact, quite a few less, because the evergreens that were going to be in that location are about 6.
Are we correct to be concerned that you would have a very hard time seeing this house if you were walking from Hingham Institution for Savings up Main Street?
That might be in the
down the road.
Yeah, I mean, that might be in the eye of the beholder, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're the homeowner, you might say, well, I want maybe just a little bit of privacy from here. I'll leave the front of the house on Main Street wide open.
Yeah.
But, the argument to be made, as you had mentioned, somebody mentioned earlier, is there a portion of this house, is the front portion of this house something that stays more exposed as is now, and perhaps that rear connector that kind of goes from about, well, if you, almost from the existing terrace back to the rear, maybe that could be a little bit more filled up with plant material. I guess there could be a question about that. I mean, that could be something to be considered.
But there might be
I
a
think,
compromise in between.
Right. I think the first priority is sort of getting some information, some background on the home, the age of the fence, as many photos as we can see to see what it looked like originally, so that we can, right now we're speculating about, what was. So I feel like that's the next step.
Well, I think, so are there any other commission members that have any other thoughts? Robert or Tracy or Ben?
I think all my concerns have been raised. I just really want to know the date of that fence at the front, and if the rules in the, as Carol has pointed out, about concealing with landscape, then we would have to come up with something smaller, obviously.
Do we have limitations? Well, so I'll wait for you until you guys all comment, but I wanted to find out, is there direction when it comes to consideration of heights of plants, if we're going to kind of put a limit on what the height of a plant can be relative to the house,
I mean,
I feel like we need some serious direction and serious rules about that.
well, it's hard to say. I mean, the rule is so as not to obscure. You know, you could argue that, well, a 16-foot tree or bush or specimen there would absolutely do that. You know, would a 6-foot, something that grows to 6 feet? Maybe not. You know, unfortunately, there's not a specific rule that dictates the height of it, but I think the intent is that we're not obscuring, you know, the structure that's there. So there's some interpretation there. But I would say the evergreens would certainly obscure that structure. And if there's some other specimen that, you know, won't grow taller than, you know, 6 feet or so, 8 feet, maybe even too high, you know, that's maybe the range, you know, but it's hard to say.
6 feet is where you need a building permit to put up a fence. 6 feet or shorter, you don't. And I don't know whether that's probably not true in a historic district.
That wouldn't be relative to plants. That wouldn't govern plants in it.
But I'm wondering that might.
No, but it's a good datum to reference, Justin. So I think it's probably something in that range. You know, I think it sounds like, and if I'm just sort of summarizing the comments from the commission, that you know, getting rid of the asphalt in the yard is a great thing. It's an improvement. It sounds like the cobble apron sort of at the auto court may help, you know, obscure that or mask it. You know, I think I'm hearing consistently that the fence along Main Street, removal of that is a concern, which I would agree with. I think it adds, there's, you know, significant character there to this property with that there. And I think if it's removed, it changes it significantly. And I think, you know, if you can look at other options for plantings along the Elm Street side that are smaller, I'm not hearing that the fence on Elm Street is a deal breaker. I personally think removal of that fence is a great thing, and finding the right landscape to go there will be a great improvement.
I want to check the age of it first, please.
Along Elm Street?
Mm-hmm.
Andrea, do you know if there's a way we can find the age of that fence? I mean, the age of the fence is one thing. Whether there was a fence there for a while or not, I guess, is the other question.
I'll do some research, and there are a lot of photographs, as Carol had said earlier.
Yeah.
And you know, I can look through a lot of photographs that we have.
And I'm looking at that image now, the view of the picket fence from Elm Street, and all I see is that fence.
Right, that fence, that's not bringing a lot of joy, that fence.
Yeah. I mean, I see the house sort of
I don't think that's the point, guys.
I know. I'm just saying, whether it's the point, it's right. You're absolutely right, Carol.
You can like it, you can hate it,
also,
doesn't matter.
Right.
Driving too is improvements to the property that will help us see the property, see the house, see the structures, which I think if more modest landscape in lieu of a fence helps us see that house better, I think would be an improvement there. But
I hope, guys, I hope I'm not insulting anyone. Sean, you do gorgeous work all over town. I've said that many times at many meetings. It's not what you're trying to do here, which is beautiful, and it's going to make the property better. But if that fence really has been sitting there for a very long time, that's our job to make sure that it doesn't come down. That's what we do. So I just need some information, and we can find it. Historical will have it.
I went out today. I don't think there's anything special with the fence on Elm Street. And I think it's always good to go out and validate, but that's just a flat board that's gotten a little curve to it. There's definitely nothing special about that fence. It couldn't be any simpler in construction.
When I was a kid, there was a broken down, nasty fence there.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's a replacement, a newer replacement, but if it's
Right.
been there a long, long time,
Right.
as part of the view of downtown. I
I'm
don't know.
just going to also reiterate my concerns one more time, that the driveway is going to be straightening out to the back corner of the main historic structure. And then there's going to be almost a straight line straight back to the corner of it's going to make a tight left corner with a 4-foot retaining wall. So that is going to be quite a bit more asphalt than what we're used to. So I do have a little bit of concerns that it's going to change the character of that view. And I know it's more practical, and it's, you need the turnaround space. That all makes sense to me. It just feels like while you're removing asphalt in the back, the right of way is not getting to appreciate that part. What we're going to get is more asphalt from the right of way. So I just want to say that one more time.
I gotta say, I think it's gonna be very, very subtle when it comes to that. You're not really gonna be picking up on the asphalt as much as some of the stone that you're going to see and some of the plant material. It's gonna be along the wall.
So I see when I'm looking at the photographs that you've provided on the bottom left, there's a large tree. Is any of the larger trees going to be taken down to create this retaining wall?
No, there's no large trees coming down. Oh, the large tree is way back there.
Okay.
It's way, way back.
Okay.
So no, it's shrubs that are there. They were gonna be picked up and moved around the site. We can use them all along the proposed lawn areas. So.
And
yeah.
I might also point out that that's going to end up being a place where cars park instead of the cars being tucked in behind the house. So that's another thought to consider.
Cars will also be, cars are also parked in the existing driveway. Maybe not in the picture you see, but there are cars parked in the existing drive and loop drive also. Not now because nobody's living there, but during the normal times that people were living there, that place would look filled with cars.
Okay, Hans, you wanted to say something?
Mike, I know we beat this up pretty good. If these, just these two fences, they're gonna need some maintenance if they stay. I mean, they're in tough shape, both of them. So
Maintain them.
yeah, they're gonna need some maintenance. So just I think we need to recognize that too.
So I think if I'm hearing, hopefully, Sean, we're giving you some direction here. I think what we're going to do is look into the history on the fence along Main Street and Elm Street. And I'm hearing that, some other options for plantings along Elm Street that won't grow maybe more than 6 feet. There's still some concern about the amount of pavement at the auto core. I don't know if that's something you can look at in terms of making some modifications there. I don't know that that's consistent across the commission. There's obviously some strong concern there, but while you're looking at the other plantings, I don't know if there's any options to look at there. That's all.
Could we do a site visit?
Sure.
I assume you could do a site visit if you wanted to. I will say that what we're hoping to do, homeowners are looking to move in mid-July, and they were looking to try to do some of the landscape pieces as well as some of the hardscape pieces. And we're hoping to work on those prior to move-in so that it's not all torn up when they get here. So we were looking to try to at least be able to have a driveway ready, which would mean the retaining wall, perhaps some amount of these landings that are outside the doors going. I was wondering if there's any way we could be working on those even while the research is being done on the fences, the railings and the fences. We could be working on the plantings also. But I wanted to see if we could come to some answer on the hardscape elements that would be involve the driveway, because that has to kind of happen first, unfortunately, the way it's sequenced. The fences, balusters, those can go later. But the way schedules have been kicked back a few weeks with hearings and with all that's happening in the world these days, it's really compressed the time to try to get that done.
So let me ask the commission then, I'm not sure if there's a comfort level to offer sort of or make a motion for partial, for some of this work. I think there's still some objection to, some of that work. I just want to remind the commission it's a majority vote, not necessarily a unanimous vote. So that's okay too. But, is there any concern from the commission if we split this to make a motion on the hardscape portions of the project?
Why don't you go through what those would be? Sean, point them out.
Right, and Sean, from what you've heard, what would you pick out as a plausible, decent bite at the apple that's uncontroversial?
Well, that may not be uncontroversial, because I heard one question about it. I don't know that I heard any more than really one real question about the auto court. But I think that the wall itself is fieldstone. We're going to try to match the low fieldstone wall against the house. I don't think that that's controversial. I don't think that the walkways or landings behind and in between the two structures, or the other piece outside the carriage house, that the kind of stone and lawn terrace is controversial. In my opinion, removing asphalt and replacing with lawn area for the kids, I don't think that's controversial either. So I think some of the removal pieces aren't, while the fences are currently a little controversial tonight, they are anyway, until more research is done. And the larger trees are controversial right now in this meeting. I don't think that the driveway itself is. The way that it's sequenced, though, is we need to retain some grade in order to do some of this work. The way it sequences, which I know is challenging. But I personally think that I don't know how that we can shrink that auto court in depth because of just what you need to turn around, So I think that for that, I don't know how much room I have to give. I mean,
that sounded like a pretty reasonable list that you.
So just curious, just one little last, currently there is an existing garage there, and assuming they pull out and turn around as it is, I guess, I don't know.
No, they back out and go around the carriage house is what they would.
I see.
So they would back out, and now we're cutting that off because we want lawn. They've got children, one, believe they're 15 and say 11 of the children, so they're pretty active. One is, they're both pretty active. I think.
Is the existing garage a two-car, Sean?
It is.
They have two
correct.
cars.
It is. Yeah.
So if they back two cars out at the same time, they could still turn and go forward.
I feel like I'm the only one who cares about the auto court, so I'm willing to defer to the other members on this.
I agree.
I do think it's going to be hard to see that auto court from Main Street. It does. that building conceals quite a bit of what's happening back in there, that house. It's hard to
Yeah.
peer up there. I mean, even
It's
if,
hard to see up there. It is.
even the most aggressive of peeping Toms would have a hard time seeing what's going on up there.
You have to be a full-blown trespasser.
Well, I think, in the interest of time, we're running very late. We do have another hearing, so I want to make sure that we can move this along. So I guess from a procedural standpoint, Andrea, if we were to make a motion to approve part of this and not all of it, is there a new application that has to come, or is it the same application that is open for the next hearing?
It would be, the cleaner thing to do would be to approve some things and then have a new application for the remainder.
So make a motion for items that did appear on the original application, but might not be the entire list.
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay.
And then, and of course, that would be making the point that it is, they're denied without prejudice at this point.
So they would have to make another application for anything that didn't get approved.
That is
Off
correct.
the parcel. Okay.
That is correct.
Is that the only way to handle that?
It's the cleanest way to do it.
Sean, would that be helpful if you could at least get the drive and the auto cart?
Yeah, ideally, yeah, that would be something that would be outstanding. Yeah, ideally.
See, this is a little different than allowing somebody to just do a foundation, if they're putting on an addition.
Right. This is,
So yeah, this is a bit different.
of part of the application.
Yeah. So
Okay.
so if you don't mind, Sean,
Okay.
you don't have to do additional exhibits, just a new application
Okay. All right.
with the remaining elements.
Right, remaining line items.
Okay, that makes sense.
So just to remind everybody, the voting members on this one would be myself, Hans, Carol, Catherine, and Tomas. And so would somebody like to make a motion?
Sure, I'll try. I would like to make a motion for a certificate of appropriateness for 93 Main Street for a landscape plan dated, what was it, May 4th, 2020. It includes taking out and remove asphalt in the back, replace that with lawn. To the left of the house, installing a new fieldstone retaining wall along the what is that?
South side?
I'm sorry, what, Carol?
I thought it was south. Am I looking upside down?
It is south. It is south. Yeah. Kind of southeast.
Mhm.
So yeah, so to the south, putting in a 3 to 4 foot retaining wall, installing with a cobblestone apron to match the existing, installing a auto cart, and putting in some bluestone slabs in front of the carriage house, in the lawn, the new lawn, as well as new stepping stones back to the main house. Do you want to leave, Sean? Do you want to leave off at this point the brick patio off to the side until you know what kind of landscaping they want to do over there?
Well, I don't mind leaving those patios on. They're really just kind of switching out from, one is taking out concrete pavers and adding stone. And the other one is kind of swapping out brick and stone. The other plantings adjacent to it are staying, little hedges against the house are staying. So I don't mind leaving it in if it's okay with you.
Okay,
I don't
so
know
we'll-
if they're going to do. I don't know that they're going to do it right away, but it wouldn't be bad to have in the drawing.
So we're going to
Being
leave it
added
off.
to the motion.
Yes, please.
We're adding it to the motion?
I think that's what
That's correct.
John was
Oh,
just asking,
okay.
whether we could.
Also putting in a new bluestone patio on the north side of the main house. What is not included here is the removal of the wood fence to the front of the house, as well as the existing fence along Elm Street, and any evergreens that has been proposed to be put in. Those are not part of this motion at this time.
So those are denied. What was Andrea, the phrasing, denied without prejudice? I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
they're
Yeah.
just denied without
Just
prejudice
But
and
they're denied without prejudice at this time.
Or postponed or something.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second?
Okay, Hans, how do you vote?
Aye.
Carol, how do you vote?
Aye.
Catherine, how do you vote? Sorry, you're on mute.
It's a no for me.
Okay. Tomas, how do you vote?
Aye.
And aye for myself. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you. And you are going to, you guys are going to check into the ages of the fences. Is that what we can do? Okay.
we'll do that.
Okay.
Are we
Thank you,
doing a
Sean.
site
Thank you.
visit?
Oh,
on
yes, I'm
22nd?
sorry. Carol
Yeah.
requested a site visit, and I think we can also do that on the 27th.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay?
June 27th?
Yes.
You just notify me at a time?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you. All right, have a good night.
You too. Thank you.
Andrea, I'm not around for the 27th, so I might just go over and peruse on my own.
Sure.
You.
Okay, the last hearing is 17 Middle Street to construct a one-story addition on the south side of the house. Thank you all for your patience. I apologize, we're running a little bit long tonight. I appreciate you hanging in there. Want to run through the application? Tell us about the project.
Sure, that sounds good. Sean Teriyaki Architectural Design, and also the homeowners, Rachael Condelli is joining us tonight. And yeah, if you don't mind, I'm just going to bring up the drawings and give you a quick summary of the packet you have, and then go through the aspects of the project.
Great. Thank you.
So here's a snapshot of Form B showing this house, 17 Middle Street, also known as 318 Main Street. It was the previous address. And here's a quick black and white photo in the file. And I have not seen any photos before the various alterations, but this house, 1765 or 1795, depending on which date you look at, that was most likely the original cape, the main roof of which you can see along the left side here. And clearly the large Nantucket dormer was added at some point. Again, I don't have an exact date. And then a large two-story piece was added on in the back, parallel to Common Street. The front entry vestibule projection, I'm not sure if that is original or not. It's most likely not original. There is a note here in the file that says under major alterations, enclosed entrance. So most likely the original house was just a simple cape, and all these various parts and components were added on over the years, like many other houses in town. Here are some photographs of the house as it looks like, as what it looks like today. So from the corner of Main and Common Street, again, you can see the remnants of the original cape here, two-story addition, the large dormer combination. And then as we wrap around the house, here is this shot here on the upper right is actually from where you enter the property from the Middle Street side, and you look at the private yard over here, and you see the backside of that same cape, and you see the alterations that have been made over the years. The entry with the balcony above, a hip dormer in the back here, two-story piece here with its own little entry back here. Here's another snapshot of that, more from Main Street. I'm sorry, Middle Street, looking perpendicularly. Almost looks like a completely different house. And then last photo on the bottom left is the again, the side view of the main cape roof line. Existing site plan, and I overlaid an aerial here just to give you a context around this house and how unique this lot is, because it's surrounded by 3 streets. It really doesn't have a back, or you could argue it has 3 fronts and 1 side, depending on what you consider the front. There is, by the way, a small garage here with a hip roof tucked into the corner, which no changes are proposed to that structure. But another reason why I included this is how it shows the footprint of the adjacent homes and the various wings and alterations that were added the years. As you're very familiar, there's really no perfect square or rectangle around here. It's different extensions, additions that have been integrated over the years. Existing floor plan, just what we were looking at earlier, the vestibule entry on the Main Street side, the rear entry on the Middle Street side, and then that third entry, common and Middle Street corner right here. The existing house has a somewhat partitioned layout, and one thing that is missing is basically a sitting room, a casual room where the kids can play and feel like they're part of the day-to-day living, which is something that basically every young family wants these days, that the house currently doesn't have. Existing elevations, we just went through these in the photographs, so I won't spend too much time. Proposed site plan showing the proposed 1-story wing that we would like to add right here. It's a 19 by 23 foot side wing, and this also shows the fact that this house, the face of the house facing Main Street is not parallel to Main Street. It's actually oblique, and it's basically getting further and further away, even though the front of the addition is slightly set back from the front of the house on Main Street. But the fact is that since they're not parallel to each other, it is actually leaving quite a bit of distance between the addition at Main Street, about, I believe, I'll give you those exact numbers later on. So here's a blow up of the floor plan here. The proposed sitting room, 1-story. It's set back 1 foot from the front face of the house. The footprint is about 23 by 19 feet. And the existing frontage of the house is about 35 feet 3 inches. So we think that from a dimensional perspective, we're not competing with the frontage of the house. And from a massing standpoint, since it's 1-story, as this front elevation illustrates, we're proposing a simple, subdued addition, continuing all the critical lines of the house. So the stone shelf foundation detail, obviously this clapboard siding exposure, the fascia and the frieze height and details all aligning, double hung windows matching the existing 6x6 double hungs. And as I wrap around, you see the proposed side elevation from the south side. The fact that the addition roof is parallel to the roof of what's remaining of the existing cape roof, the 10 pitch, and just tucked in there under that, the rake. There's really not much of a rake detail, but it is still tucking in just under that. That's the proposal. So that's in a nutshell, yeah.
Have you got a plan for the second floor?
We don't have a plan for the second floor right now. We have a diagrammatic plan. We don't have a second floor extension proposed, other than the fact that the addition will die into the part of the second floor of the house here. But it is a one-story addition and won't change the footprint of the second floor.
And how many bedrooms are there?
That's a good question. I'm going to defer to Rachel real
Yep.
quick on this one. I believe, is it 4?
There's 5. There's 4
Five
bedrooms
with the-
upstairs, and then
Right.
downstairs there's on the first floor. We have an au pair that lives with us, so it's a separate bedroom on the first floor.
So there's only one kitchen,
Yes.
she asked. It's a single house.
Correct.
Correct, but it's almost configured with all these multiple doors as,
That's what's confusing.
It used to be a 2-family, I believe.
Okay.
I forget the year it was converted, but it was a 2-family at one point.
What year was the original house built?
1765 or 1795. There are 2 dates.
So an enormous amount of additions have been made over those years.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
So, I mean, it seems to me this addition is just one more. It's been added on to extensively over the years.
Is it officially Middle Street or officially Main Street?
Middle.
Where does the mail go?
It used to
The
be
mail
Main
goes
Street.
around-
Right now it goes to Middle Street. The current official address is 17 Middle Street. And I don't
Okay.
know the reason as to why it was changed from 318 Main Street. I don't know the history of why that.
Maybe that was the 2 houses. One had a Main Street address and one had a Middle Street address.
Could be.
But there is a point in the fact that it's been a continuously evolving structure. No surprise given its location.
Yeah, exactly.
So in terms of materials and windows, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So all the materials proposed are wood. The roofing currently is asphalt in the main house. So we're matching that. I think we had discussed cedar roof at some point, but I think the concern was that it would probably stand out too much in contrast to what's there. So I think the goal was to continue the asphalt, but otherwise wood siding, wood trim, and windows being wood windows with wood exterior with insulated glass.
Okay. Okay. Anything else you want to point out before we get into discussion?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, I can open up drawings as the discussion continues and
Okay.
go there.
Yeah, it's great to be able to see and reference on the screen, so I appreciate that.
Sure.
Okay, so I'd like to open it up to the commission. Would anybody like to start?
Well, I think as long as the materials on the addition match the rest of the house, I wouldn't have any problem with it. You know, the windows are the same, the facing and the roof materials are all the same as the so-called original house.
When the addition seems subordinate to the existing structure.
Yeah.
The color will be the same.
This will have a full basement under the addition?
That is the current plan. If feasible, we would like to gain a basement space as part of the foundation excavation.
Yeah, I see the staircase there, so.
That's right. Yeah, there will be a one-way staircase leading to that basement.
Yep.
And the reason for the staircase is that part of the house is a crawl space, which disconnects this piece. So we can't get under there through the current basement.
So I
Kind
guess,
of
go ahead,
sorry,
Carol.
in agreement with Robert is there's not much more you can do to this place. It's been bastardized is the right word, I think, for.
Yeah, I was going to say messed with, but bastardized
Well,
is
there you
good
go.
too.
Yeah, it's a good word.
Evolved.
Evolved.
Evolved, yes.
Hans, you want to say something?
Yeah. Hey, John, how you doing?
Hi, Hans.
Hey, A 2.2. Question just how you bring in the roof against the trim on the existing gable. You know, is there like an inch or two there? And how does that joining look like?
Right now, the intent was to basically use the existing rake dimension and tuck in just under that.
So you just, the roof comes right in underneath the trim?
Yes, it comes underneath the trim, so there's a break in the roof.
Yeah.
Which we thought would be more appropriate than trying to continue it flush.
Okay.
And then a break on the Main Street facade as well.
Okay, and then in joining on the first floor as you work your way down towards the ground level. I know you're working with a little bit of a setback there. So what does that adjoinment look like?
So that's right now is a 1 foot setback, and over there we're leaving the corner trim and a little bit of clapboard exposed.
Okay.
But if that starts getting too tight in the field, perhaps the whole inset should be trim with a break in it.
Yeah.
If those clapboard pieces start getting really small.
Okay. Hey, John, I'm gonna leave it to the architects to see what kind of detail and questions they have related to that, how that joins up. But I think in terms of the massing, design, configuration, I think this is an appropriate addition for this house. Just want to understand how it, and I'll let the architects ask how it fits in if they want to have any more detail there.
Ben?
So John, I'm not an architect.
Or a builder.
We thought you
You're
were.
definitely a builder.
John, I'm looking at A2.1 and I see the glazing on the house, which is, there's a lot of glazing. And then you have just the 2 windows there. Did you do any studies on a different setup for that front facade?
Possibly a 3rd window that's similar to the spacing of the existing. Is that what you were thinking? Possibly?
Well, yeah, there just seems, it seems like, well, the house is quirky and your work is not quirky. And so when I look at that particular elevation, it looks more like a garage to me. And maybe that's the intent, a side view of a garage where you typically don't have a lot of glazing. And maybe that's the intent.
I mean, I think, I guess the garage is one interpretation, but you could also see it as a small, like a sunroom or sitting room addition. I think we were trying to keep it simple. There were some ideas early on, should we put a decorative dormer here? But we thought maybe it was going to get a little too busy.
Right.
And if you try to add more decoration on this roof. And I think the spacing of the windows similarly, as you wrap around the corner on Common Street, this particular spacing here, for example, is not that different from what we're proposing. So I guess we were hoping that if it's detailed right, and if it aligns properly with the existing historical lines, that the simplicity could still work here. But we can certainly enhance it and put another layer of trim work, maybe, if you think that's appropriate.
I'll leave it. I think I'll leave it for the rest of the commission members to see if they have perhaps some ideas.
I think the simplicity of the addition is a relief from all the busyness on the other side there. All those windows.
Yeah.
So I actually disagree with you a little bit, Robert. I feel like the massing of it feels like a lot of roof line to me. And I'm wondering if maybe there's a way to break up the roof. I was reviewing the historic districts guidelines, and when you're creating an addition, the massing of the addition is often helped by a hyphen or a connector piece to help reduce the roofage. And I'm wondering if playing with the roof height a little bit would make that feel a little more diminutive to the main structure. So I was thinking potentially either, I don't even mind seeing the connector, the hyphen at that height, and then maybe a bump up, or some way to break up that roof line, because it feels a hair out of balance. It's almost too simple in my mind. And when you're driving down Main Street, what you see is just roof, because most of it is hidden behind a hedge, but forever, hedges aren't forever. So I guess I'm just thinking forever.
Or would you think a dormer there though, or not?
I was actually thinking of just a roof change, because it just feels like a lot of roof, and it's very complex on the left side, but then super plain on the right, and it just is feeling a little heavy to one side to me. And so I just feel like breaking up that expanse of roof on the right is going to help mitigate that issue. And
Do you think lowering the roof line?
well, I was thinking the hyphen, they're calling it in the guidelines, historic district guidelines, they're calling it a hyphen, which is a great term. That could be at that existing height that the of the proposed plans here, but then maybe a little bump up to create a little rhythm and break up the roof and make it a little more balanced with the left is what I was thinking.
So do you think, I'm going to try to make a bad drawing here, but do you think a step down is what you're thinking, or are you thinking a step up, meaning the ridge continues, let's say, and then it steps down a little bit as it connects to the main house?
I'm open to either of those ideas. I think either one fulfills the objective, which in my mind is to create, but I would love that roof line to be taken all the way, fully down, all the way down, so that the rake continues down to the drip. Is there a way to do that and create a little, the edge of the roof in the main body?
Oh, I see. So you're saying bring it down.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have basically 3 planes.
3 planes versus 2. Thank you.
And then the wall then would probably follow that, right? So in other words, let's say if this piece aligns with the main house or is 1 foot, maybe this is back 1.5 feet.
Yeah, or it goes back and it comes forward. I'm open to that idea. I just feel like there's a ton of roof and it's feeling out of balance with the left side to me.
And as we do that, I think that could work. And we would obviously take this window right here and move it slightly to the right. And that would probably address Ben's question of window spacing. So, effectively our addition looks like it's spanning this distance here and ends up being a kind of a more squarish proportion.
Yeah.
So I think all of that could work.
And actually then that window is in the living area versus sort of in the hall connecting area.
Yeah, we can definitely integrate that. And I think that will look good.
I like that. I think that, I shouldn't say that. I think that's more appropriate and according to the guidelines.
And then on the back side though, maybe, I don't know if we want to repeat the same thing or simply let the ridge drop here and maybe not continue it all the way down on this side. Just because I'm not sure if that makes it a little too
fussy. Yeah, I'm open to that. I think that that looks. My greater concern was the massing of the roof on the Main Street side.
Yeah.
Yeah, the rear elevation has a lot going on. I think you don't need any more breaks.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that sounds good. We can definitely integrate that and either show it to you again or send it to you, or.
I think both those forms would have been appropriate, but that's a nice modification.
I can also submit the sketch as the official record. No, I'm kidding. No, we'll update this properly.
I didn't realize I muted myself. How about some of the other commission members? Any thoughts?
I think that's a nice change Catherine just suggested. And I think that makes the windows make more sense facing Main Street.
Yeah, I would echo Carol and say that I think Catherine's proposal makes a lot of sense. I think that would make it be a nice breakup. That would be my only comment.
Tracy?
Yeah, I think Catherine did a nice job of explaining a lot of the similar things I was thinking. You know, Carol asked the question of what is the second floor. The plans we have say cathedral ceiling. Cam kind of hinted that maybe there's a second phase to this, but I think that Catherine's comments kind of address maybe some of what may happen in a phase two. You know, Rachel, I'm sure you love your house. You know, we're looking at this from a historical standpoint, and we throw terms around of like bastardized or
sorry about that.
Gone to, but it is a beautiful house, but that original cape is kind of gone. Yeah,
it's gone,
and it's not your fault. It's nothing you did. So, you know, we have this giant hedge both on Main Street and on Middle Street, as Catherine noted. You know, hedges come and go. I do think this addition is kind of hidden. So, I feel between Ben and Catherine and Carol, a lot of my comments have kind of been addressed.
And just to clarify, there won't be a phase two. There won't be a future expansion. As you see in this drawing right here, you can't even stand up in that. You wouldn't be able to stand up in there. Just to clarify that, maybe I may have been talking about the basement, but this is a one phase project.
I think, you know, I share the sentiments of my commission members here. And I think when I originally looked at this, I felt that while it was, you know, a modest addition, you know, the proportions of it were a little off. And first thing I thought of was garage. Not that that's a bad thing, but it didn't seem like what this space was. And I think by modifying the proportions based on the sketch that we've seen, changes it completely, and it looks less like a garage, and it looks like a, you know, first floor addition for the use that it's intended for. And I think these the sketches here are an improvement, and I think it's a nice add.
Maybe the new garage will be our phase two. No, I'm just kidding. That's a small space, but thank you. We love the neighborhood. We love the location. When we moved 4 years ago, we loved the historical aspect of all the homes that we live near. So we have 3 little boys under the age of 6, and they need some space. So a little extra space would be a lot of help.
I think it's a charming home, and I've always admired it. It just commands that area of Main Street. It's really very handsome.
So, any other comments from the commission? I'm not sure if the commission is comfortable with making a motion with revised drawings submitted, or do you want to wait to see the revised drawings?
Yeah, I'm not voting on this, but my guess is that even the presented plans were appropriate, but so there's probably not a lot of worry in getting. We'd like to have the new drawings submitted in sort of an as-built fashion, not as-built. I'm not expressing myself well.
It's late.
I don't know what the procedure is on that. I mean, does Andrea just approve it and say, yeah, that's what they intended? I don't know.
No, what I would do is when John submits it to me, then I'll just send it out to everybody.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
And unless there are any major objections. So, you know, the risk is Well, there isn't too much with John because he always does a fine job. But, you know, the risk obviously is if we don't, if there's a problem, then, you know, it's not exactly what we wanted, but
Right.
we're not really reviewing it. We sort of give an agreement that this is going to be fine. And it probably is.
It probably is, but based on a drawing, it's hard to kind of just rubber stamp it. I don't know, maybe. I don't know. I don't know
So,
what the-
let me ask-
Homeowners in a hurry?
yeah, let me ask the applicant, are you in a rush? I mean, do you have time?
I mean, as soon as possible. We plan to be away for the month of August, so that would be an ideal time to get started if possible. But we'd like to do it as soon as possible.
The next meeting is July the 9th. So you would get, it would be approved at that point.
So it's less than a month.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if there are no other issues you'd like us to look into, you know, we can revise the drawing, submit it, and then appear briefly on July 9th.
Good.
If that sounds good to everyone.
I think that's the right way to do this. At least we'll all be, everybody, you know, yourself, the applicant, you know, the homeowner and the commission, I think we'll all be comfortable just seeing it on paper.
Plus, we don't even have to craft the motion then.
Right.
Yeah, that'll be an easy one.
Well, we're finishing up early, just short of 3 hours.
Oh, we're not done yet, Robert. All right, so
Okay.
we're continuing, correct?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll see you on July 9th.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I think you wanted to mention Tracy's, Tracy had some great comments and suggestions for what we should really be recommending or asking for in addition to what we already are for plans. So, do you want to deal with that now?
Yeah, I think, and, you know, I think we, you know, Tracy made some great suggestions at the last hearing, and he followed up with some images, you know, sort of explaining what he thought would be a good suggestion. And Tracy, I don't know if you have those handy to put you on the spot, but you know, if you were able to share your screen and just sort of walk us through your thoughts with that, I think it'd be good for the commission to see it. I think you're on mute.
Yeah, it might take me a minute to pull it up, but let me find it here. Basically, you know, kind of what I expanded upon at the end of the last meeting was I feel like we should be looking at these items in a bigger context. And I think 8 Pond Street today was a good example of that, because there's, you know, we get a site plan and it has no contours on it. It doesn't show the neighboring house, and we're concerned about how large the you know, how big that addition structure is to the existing structure. But what about the house next to it? You know, and I thought Carol had some great comments about the proportions being appropriate for a barn and a structure, but I think that we should kind of ask for more images, more or less, as part of the application. And I used Hingham GIS, which is a free website, and Google Street View, which is a free website. I'm trying to share my screen, Sherry.
No, I just what you mean. I was using Google Street View while we were looking at these things. It's wonderful.
So I have two screens. I don't know which one is shared. Can anyone see anything or no?
Not yet. Sherry, can he share
Yeah,
his screen?
he should be able to now. I put him as co-host.
Let me move it to the other. Anyone can see anything now or no?
No.
Not yet, not yet.
In the meantime, let me just ask Andrea a quick question. Are you not able to get into the town hall to do that Form Bs?
I can, but the time is limited. So, but I will definitely make it a point to do that.
Do you need help with that? I can help you if you need. At one
No,
point, you're
that's
like, if I had more help, then.
Yeah, no, they wouldn't let you in at this point anyway, so.
Yeah, it's like the number of people in the building per hour.
Yeah, actually, as of the 6th, which is right after the 4th of July, the building will be open for employees only, but we're going to be on a schedule. And I don't know what that's going to be, but the objective being so that there aren't.
Yeah, it's
a
the
lot
number of
people-
humans per hour.
Right,
in the building.
exactly. But yes, I can get that information, Catherine.
I'm expecting to see everyone at town meeting on Saturday.
Oh, right.
Oh, it's going to be so hot. 90 and sunny.
Yeah.
Bring an umbrella. Oh, and if you haven't heard, they want everyone to wear closed-toed shoes because of the football field, the turf.
AstroTurf.
Or whatever it is, it just gets very, very hot.
And smelly.
And instead of an umbrella, you bring a parasol, which is
Yes, you would.
against the sun.
Yes, a parasol.
It's really going to be proof of who is willing to fulfill their civic duties. That's for sure.
There you go.
Yay, Tracy.
There you go, Tracy.
Yeah, I had to go through, I'm on a Mac, so I had to go through all types of security things there. But so this was just a quick PDF I made that I shared with Andrea, and she shared it with Michael. But this was looking at Lincoln Street that we approved at the last meeting last week. But I feel like an aerial view of showing more, we get a lot of plot plans that just show the property, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like an aerial view would, and this is free Hingham GIS, that kind of shows a bigger area. And here we see that shed across the street, and we can see how far the neighboring buildings are set back. But we get a better idea of like what moving that shed would do to bringing it up, because they were approved to bring it up even with the building line. And so I think kind of having an aerial like this rather than just a plot plan of the site specific with no context is helpful. And that's something that's free from Hingham GIS.
And is Hingham GIS, I'm looking now, mapsonline.net?
No, I can send a link out. I'll send it to Andrea, and she
Can you just say it? And so I'll just type it into Google just to see if I find the right thing. Is it literally free Hingham GIS?
If I go Hingham GIS, it's a hingham-mass.gov, and it's right here, this online GIS mapping tool, and you can just go find an address.
Mapsonline.net. Yeah.
On street, which we looked at today, and there's 8 Pond, and you can kind of get this,
Yeah, I just found it.
you know, but you can go down and you can turn on a different base map, and there you get the whole aerial, right?
That's
So
great.
it's that simple.
Cool.
I just did an example, and this is hinghammass.gov site. It's free, right? You take a screenshot of this and you include it, and you start to get a context of what's around, and it would help us to see, especially on this last one, 17, whatever we were on, Main Street.
Wow, this thing's incredible.
Middle Street, you know, we would see that. You can see it from Middle Street, you can see it from Main Street, you know, you get an idea of where it's from. So this one, not to talk about a application that's currently open, but they want to put the barn here. You see it from Main Street. You absolutely see it from Main Street.
Yes, you do.
You know, so again, I was using a project that we had already approved as an example, but I think that it could be very valuable to include kind of that context of the project, and then using Google Street View kind of show the approach. Because when you move that shed out here and you cut these trees down, you start to change the public realm as you drive or walk down this street. Once these trees are cut down and that shed, that tiny little shed, is moved out to the face of this building, that has a prominence on the street, you know. And I think that these are, and then this is from the neighboring house. There you can see the shed, there you can see the trees. I think that these are kind of some quick, simple, free, for that isn't taking an architect's time or anything else, to help us understand it a little bit better without being on the site.
So here's my concern, my only concern really. I think it's a great idea, Tracy, and I think it definitely helps put it into context. But I've also noticed some of the architects submit photographs and vantage points from roads that maybe aren't, you know, fully what we might see ourselves. They might be a little tweaked in a little one direction or another, with a, you know, a bush or a tree in a certain area where a vantage point would change. So I'm just concerned that whoever submits these will pick and choose the vantage points that they want to share. And in reality, I almost think it's better to have the computer available, you know, to see it in real time, where we can, you know, in our own, and move it around the way you just did and walk us through it. That's hugely helpful.
Yeah, and that may be something that's possible once we're all back in the same room. Because I totally agree. But I think as part of an application point, rather than, we get a lot of two-dimensional elevations or a site plan that's only the site. And I think asking for a few street views or asking for an aerial photo kind of helps expand that a little bit. And it's not going to solve every issue, but I think it helps put things in context a little bit more. And we're still going to have site visits. I know that's a big thing for Carol. We're still going to have 3D models in some cases, you know, but in the few months that I've been on the commission, I feel like some of the things that have been representative have been with blinders on, and I'm trying to extend the blinders a little bit.
Yeah, and I think you're bringing some new awareness of these tools. I mean, I noticed in this Hingham GIS, you can even highlight the historic districts. There's a layer for historic districts.
I actually turned that on today when we were looking at the Pond Street one, because if you do the Google Street View down that road, there's been so many additions on that entire road. I'm like, it seemed like that house, 8 Pond Street, was just like a little needle in a haystack almost. Like, well, what is historic around it? And you see how big that historic district is, and and you get a better understanding for it. You know, I mean, Carol's lived here 50 years. Andrea, I don't know how long you've lived here. You know, some of you have a better understanding of it than us, than some of us. But I think context is a big part of this. And it's interesting to see like the amount of detail we focus on with the different projects. So we talked for 45 minutes about the posts of a fence on, you know, the 83 Main Street, which is important. I'm not downplaying it. And then we like almost approve a garage type addition on 17 Middle Street in 15 minutes. Like it's almost like what is presented to us and what's important. And I think having context helps.
To your point, Tracy, John did have an aerial view. He does and that was helpful. You're exactly
Yes.
right. He did a great job. He always does.
Yeah.
Hey, Sherry, can you bring in some of these photos remotely, just a little bit of legwork up front if it's not too much trouble? And we can just refer to them during the meetings if we're continuing to be remote.
Well,
Yep.
let me
We
talk
can
with-
always do that. Yeah, that's easy.
Yeah, or well, we'll talk about it. I'll talk with Sherry and I'll talk about it and figure it out.
Okay.
I don't, do you think this would be burdensome for the applicant to do this? I don't think so. I think it's a wonderful idea.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was trying to do. And when I sent this PDF to Andrea, I said, I kind of put this together in 15 minutes. I used 2 free websites. And I'm not trying to put a burden on the homeowner, you know, but I feel like some of the applications are them trying to get a feel for how it's going to go before they put a lot of money into it. For lack
And
of
there's a
word.
wide range of computer skills
Yeah.
of homeowners for what's like.
Without a doubt, without a
Yeah.
doubt. You know, but and then on the flip side, right? If we suddenly start adding a bunch of photos and aerial photos, and Andrea has to reproduce them and make 10 copies to distribute to us, that's a cost to the town side as well. So, you know, I think that there can be a happy medium.
You know, we don't charge a fee. I think we're the only board that doesn't charge an application fee. So, you know, to your point, Tracy, I don't think it would be overly burdensome to have people, you know, do minimum views, you know, an overhead or some other things that, you know, they can do and submit that to us.
I think we make it part of the application requirements.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Or could it also, I know that when we have been in the town hall, the architects have had their plans up on the big screen. At least it could be something that we could do live together and on the big screen. At the very least, that they're prepped, that this is going to be part of what they're presenting.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it can potentially change once we're all together again.
Yeah, and I think that's a good supplementary tool that we can easily add to our meetings once we're all in person, because I think we're all using it now, or a lot of us are using it now at our computers while we're talking about this, and it's extremely helpful. So I think it's a great idea to add that to the meetings once we, or at least have the opportunity to have it ready to go at the meeting so that we can kind of walk through this.
And it might be from a public meeting law perspective, we might want to have, say, hey, Sherry, could you bring up the GIS map of that plan? But this does presume the online meetings continue. Just so, and I'm thinking that everybody sees the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Good idea.
Thank you, Tracy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to, you know, I think that last project, the 17 Middle Street, I think we can envision what that little cottage was, you know, but that thing has been long gone, and just having some more context of what that historic district is, I think is powerful and useful.
Agreed.
So I think then, just to kind of wrap this up then, so then, Andrea, is this something we can easily add to the application?
Yeah, I'll work on that. I'll do that. And, you know, we just got a couple of applications in for July. And so I can go back to them and ask them to submit something additional. That's not a problem.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that'd be great.
Now, I did not get you the meeting dates for the entire year until 10 minutes before the meeting started. So if you can just, if everybody's okay with July the 9th, then when we meet in July, you can go through them and make sure that we can approve the rest of them, okay?
Okay.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, great.
Okay, unless there's anything else, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. All those in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Good night.